She married a poor cowboy for shelter, then found his mansion and demanded 90 days to leave. Myra Whitlock knew her new husband had lied before the wagon reached the house. The first sign was not the mansion. It was not the white road curling through miles of autumn pasture, or the stone posts rising ahead like something built for a judge instead of a cattleman. It was the old ranch hand beside the gate who pulled off his hat, lowered his eyes, and said, "Evening, Mr. Rusk." Jonas Rusk did not correct him. He only touched 2 fingers to his hat brim and kept the wagon rolling. Mara sat stiff beside him, one hand gripping the handle of her carpet bag, the other pressed flat against her skirt to keep it from trembling. She had married him that morning in the little church at Dry Creek Crossing, with dust on the floorboards and frost still shining on the hitching rail outside. She had owned 1 black dress, 2 aprons, a chipped comb, and wages the Desert Star Hotel still had not paid her when it closed its doors. Jonas had offered a roof, honest work, a quiet place where no landlord could throw her out before winter. She had believed him because his coat was plain, his boots were worn, and he spoke like a man who counted every nail before buying a box. Now the wagon passed between 2 stone gate pillars, carved with wheat and running horses. Mara turned her head slowly. "You told me your ranch was beyond the creek." "It is." "You did not tell me there were gates." His jaw worked once beneath the short dark beard he had trimmed for the wedding. "Gates keep cattle from straying." "These are not cattle gates." The horses pulled them onto a road lined with cottonwoods. Beyond the trees, land opened wide in every direction. Red cattle grazed on a slope. A line of worker cottages stood near a windmill. Farther on, a barn rose broad and painted, with a cupola catching the last gold of the sun. Men near the corral stopped what they were doing as the wagon passed. One lifted a hand, "Welcome home, Mr. Rusk." Another called, "Good to have you back, sir." "Sir?" Mara's fingers tightened on her bag. "How much of this belongs to you?" Jonas kept his eyes on the team. "Enough." "That is not an answer." "It is the only one that will not make matters worse before we reach the house." "They are already worse." He did not speak again. That silence frightened her more than a lie would have, because silence meant there was more to see. The cottonwoods thinned, the road climbed a gentle rise, then Mara saw it. A house stood above the valley, built of pale stone and dark timber, with deep porches, tall windows, and chimneys smoking into the evening air. Not a ranch house, not a weathered cabin with a lean-to kitchen and a muddy yard. This was an estate, grand enough to hold a courthouse inside it and still have room for dances. Below it lay a carriage barn, a smokehouse, long cattle sheds, a fenced garden, a blacksmith shop, and 2 smaller houses with clean curtains in the windows. A glass-roofed wing stretched from one side of the main building, shut and dusty, its panes touched with low mist from within. Mara's breath left her. The man beside her looked exactly as he had looked that morning. Gruff, broad-shouldered, weathered from sun and work. One cuff was frayed where his sleeve met his glove. The brim of his hat had a bend in it from too many years of rain. Only his poverty had been false. "Stop the wagon," she said. Jonas pulled the horses to a halt. Mara climbed down before he could come around to help her. Her shoes struck the hard-packed road, and for one dizzy moment she wished she had stayed hungry in town rather than come here blind. Jonas stepped down after her. "Mara, how much is yours?" He removed his hat, all of it. "The land?" "Yes." "The house?" "Yes." "The barns, cottages, cattle, and men calling you sir?" His face tightened, but he answered, "Yes." She looked back at the stone house. A woman stood waiting on the porch, straight as a fence post, with iron-gray hair pinned beneath a dark bonnet and a ring of keys at her waist. Mara turned to Jonas. "You let me marry a stranger." "No. You let me marry a poor man who did not exist." He took that like a blow and did not step away from it. "I should have told you. That would have been useful before the vows." "I know." "No, you know now." Her voice shook, and she hated that it did. This morning you were willing to let me promise my life to what you chose to show me." The woman from the porch came down the steps. Her gaze moved from Jonas to Mara, then to the carpetbag hanging from Mara's hand. "Jonas," she said. "Aunt Lydia. So not a sister. An aunt, perhaps old enough to have helped raise him, sharp enough to run the place in his absence." The woman gave Mara a small nod. "Mrs. Rusk, I am Lydia Harrow. The East Suite has been prepared for you. Supper is waiting." Mara looked past her at the wide front doors, the polished brass handles, the windows glowing with lamplight. Everything about the house seemed ready to swallow her whole. "I will not need a suite," Mara said. Lydia's mouth pressed thin. "You are the wife of Jonas Rusk." "That appears to be the first true thing I have heard today." Jonas looked down at the ground. Lydia's hand moved to the keys at her waist. "This is not a boarding room where a woman may take offense and demand another bed." Mara met her eyes. "I have worked in boarding rooms since I was 14. I know exactly what a bed costs when a woman has no money." The air between them went still. Jonas spoke quietly. "Lydia, give us a moment. I will not have the household put into confusion on your wedding day." "You should have thought of that before helping prepare a grand surprise," Mara said. Lydia's eyes flashed, not with cruelty but with offense. "I did not know what he told you." That answer struck Mara because it sounded true. Jonas put his hat back on slowly. "She did not." Mara looked at him. "Then you stood alone in your lie. That must be a comfort." He said nothing. Inside, the house smelled of beeswax, cedar smoke, and roasted meat. Thick rugs softened every step. Paintings watched from the walls. A clock ticked in the hall with a deep, rich sound, as if even time had been purchased here in a better quality than elsewhere. Mara stood in the front parlor and did not sit. She had cleaned rooms like this. She had polished banisters until her hands cracked. She had carried coal for people who forgot she was human once the fire was lit. She knew the language of wealth well enough to understand how small it expected her to feel. Jonas remained near the door. "Why?" she asked. He looked tired then, not from the road, from the question. "Because my name changes people." "That is not an answer." "It is the beginning of one." "Then finish it." He took a breath. "When folks know what I own, they laugh too quickly. They agree too easily. They ask for favors with smiles. Women hear Rusk Ridge before they hear Jonas. I wanted one person to know me first." Mara stared at him. "So you chose a woman with no wages and no bed, then tested whether she loved a poor man." His face lost color. "I did not think of it that way." "You had the luxury not to." Silence settled hard between them. Mara walked to a crooked chair near the hearth and straightened it without thinking. The small act made her angrier because even now, in a house that had tricked her, her hands knew work. "I want a wagon back to town tomorrow," she said. Jonas nodded. "If that is your choice, I will take you." No pleading, no command, no grand speech about duty. Somehow that hurt too. Mara turned and walked out before tears could shame her. She did not know where she was going. She only knew she could not breathe under those ceilings. Her feet carried her through a side passage, past the kitchen, and into a covered walk that led toward the glass-roofed wing she had seen from the road. The outer door was locked. Through the dusty panes, she saw sheet-covered tables, a row of closed doors, a long counter, and beyond it, pale tiled steps leading down into a room clouded with faint steam. Warmth breathed through the cracks. Jonas had followed, keeping distance. "What is this place?" she asked. "The old Bath Lodge." She looked back. Bath Lodge. A mineral spring runs beneath it. My grandmother took travelers here once. Rooms, meals, hot baths, fresh horses when the stage line still came close. "And now?" "Closed 12 years. "Why?" "That answer belongs partly to Lydia." Mara pressed her palm to the glass. Beneath the dust and neglect, she saw order waiting to be restored. 6 guest rooms on one side, maybe more beyond the bend, a kitchen hatch. Shelving, tables, a separate entrance from the road, work, not charity, not allowance, not a rich man's apology laid at her feet like a rug. Work that could make money. Her heartbeat changed. "Who has the key?" she asked. Jonas watched her carefully. "Lydia." "Get it." A long pause passed, then he went. When he returned, Lydia came with him, her keys sounding softly at her waist. She did not look pleased, but she separated one long brass key from the ring. "This wing is not part of the main household," Lydia said. "Good," Mara answered. Jonas held out his hand for the key, but Lydia placed it in Mara's palm instead. The brass was cool and heavy. Mara fitted it into the lock. The door resisted. She pushed harder. Dust shook loose from the frame. With one scraping groan, the old bath lodge opened. Warm mineral air touched her face. Inside, sheet-covered chairs waited like ghosts. The floor was dirty. One shutter hung crooked. A broken lamp chimney glittered near the wall. Somewhere beneath the tiles, water moved with a soft, steady sound, patient as time. Myra stepped across the threshold. Then she turned back to Jonas. 90 days, she said. His eyes narrowed slightly. For what? I stay 90 days. I reopen this place as a lodging house. I take no allowance from you. Every plate, blanket, candle, and pound of flour is written down. I earn a fair share from rooms, meals, baths, and stable space. Lydia looked sharply at Jonas, but he kept his eyes on Mara. At the end, Mara continued, you count my share exactly. No gift hidden in it. No mercy. No husband's kindness dressed as wages. Then I decide whether I remain your wife or leave with money I earned myself. The spring whispered beneath the floor. Jonas said, and if the lodge fails? Then I leave knowing failure was mine, not poverty's, not yours. He looked into the abandoned wing, then back at her. What do you need first? Mara closed her fingers around the brass key. A broom, she said, a notebook, and the truth from now on. Jonas lowered his head once. You will have all three. Mara did not forgive him. But she stepped deeper into the locked wing, breathing dust and warm water. And for the first time since morning, she was not being carried by another person's choice. She had found a door, and she had the key. By sunrise, Mara Whitlock had learned two things about the old Bath Lodge. First, it was worse than it looked. Second, she wanted it anyway. The dawn came cold over Rusk Ridge, pale and silver across the windows, but inside the locked wing, warm breath rose from the mineral spring beneath the tiles. It made the dust smell of damp wood, old soap, and forgotten money. Mara stood in the main room with her sleeves rolled, a scarf tied over her hair, and a notebook open on the nearest table. The table wobbled under her hand. She wrote that down. One long room for meals, 6 guest chambers in the East Hall, 2 smaller rooms near the back, perhaps for hired help. 1 bathing chamber with 3 tiled pools, 1 cracked, serving counter usable after scrubbing. Kitchen range rusted but not dead, cupboards full of plates, many chipped, linen shelves locked, shutters warped, west door swollen, roof leak above room 4, mice in the lower pantry. She wrote until her fingers cramped. Then she began counting beds. By the time Lydia Harrow appeared in the doorway, Mara had stripped sheets from 3 mattresses, dragged 2 broken chairs into a pile, and opened every window that would lift. A crooked beam of sunlight caught the dust in the air, turning it gold enough to mock the filth. Lydia stood with both hands folded over the key ring at her waist. You are awake early, she said. So is dirt. Lydia's mouth tightened, but not enough to hide the faintest pull of amusement. You requested a broom, a notebook, and truth. The broom is by the door. You appear to have found the notebook. And the truth. Lydia stepped inside, careful with her hem. The truth is that this lodge was my sister's pride before it became her sorrow. Mara stopped folding a stained sheet. Jonas's mother. Yes, Abigail Rusk opened it for stage passengers and families traveling west. She believed a ranch that sat beside a road ought to offer more than dust and a trough. Rooms, meals, baths from the spring, clean laundry, warm bread. Lydia looked toward the tiled chamber where steam had begun to purl against the glass. It made money for a time. For a time, Myra repeated. When the stage route changed, fewer travelers came. Then Abigail fell ill. The lodge closed room by room. After she died, Jonas could not bear to hear strangers laughing in a place where his mother used to sing. The explanation softened the room, but not Myra's resolve. "That is sad," she said. "It is not useful." Lydia lifted one brow. Myra set the sheet aside. "Grief may close a door. It does not scrub a floor. If this place is to earn again, I need to know what belongs to it and what belongs to the main house." Lydia studied her for a long moment. "You speak as if you are already mistress here." "No," Myra said. "I speak as if I have 90 days and no time to waste." That answer settled between them better than kindness would have. Lydia crossed to the linen shelves and removed a smaller key from her ring. She unlocked the doors herself, then stepped back. Myra opened them. Inside lay folded cloth in careful stacks, yellowed by years but mostly sound. Sheets, pillowcases, table covers, bath towels, aprons. Some had blue thread worked into the corners, a small stitched mark shaped like a running horse. "Abigail marked the lodge linen separate from household stores," Lydia said. "You may use those, not the main house linen, not the silver, not the china used for family dinners." "I did not ask for them." "No, but most women would." Myra looked at her. Most women have not been accused of taking comfort before they touched it. Lydia's face changed slightly. Myra regretted the sharpness, but not enough to call it back. The whole house had been built on things nobody said soon enough. Lydia closed one hand over her keys. "You will need soap, lamp oil, flour, coffee, beans, salt pork, vinegar, candles, mattress ticking, window putty, nails, and at least 3 able women if you expect to serve meals and baths at once." "I know. You will need money before guests give you any." Myra shut the linen cupboard. "Everything bought for this lodge goes in the account book. It comes out of lodge earnings before anyone takes a share. And if there are no earnings, then Jonas owns a cleaner failure than he did yesterday." For the first time, Lydia almost smiled. Almost. At mid-morning, Jonas arrived carrying a hammer, a coil of rope, and 2 boards across one shoulder. His coat was off, his sleeves rolled, and sawdust clung to one cuff. He stopped in the doorway when he saw Myra kneeling beside a warped shutter. "You started before breakfast," he said. "So did the sun." "I brought boards for the west door." "Good, it sticks." "I noticed." She glanced up. "Did you notice before yesterday?" His hand tightened on the hammer. "Yes." "Then why was it still sticking?" He looked around the room, taking in the covered tables, the cracked lamps, the quiet pools breathing steam behind the glass. "Because I could always find work that shouted louder." Myra returned to the shutter. "That is the first useful answer you have given." Jonas came inside. He did not ask where to work. He went to the west door, tested it, then crouched to examine the swollen frame. The silence between them was not comfortable, but it did not feel empty. It felt like a plank being measured before cutting. After a while, he said, "I can give you 2 carpenters." "I need 3. "You may have one." Myra turned. "You just said 2. "I said I can give you 2. I will give you 1. Her eyes narrowed. "Is this how rich men bargain?" "No, it is how ranchers keep fence lines standing before a storm. North Pasture lost posts last night. If cattle break through, no traveler will sleep here because every man will be chasing stock by lantern." She disliked the answer. Worse, she understood it. "1 carpenter," she said, "and you before breakfast until the west door shuts clean and the roof over room 4 stops leaking." Jonas nodded, agreed. "And no ordering men away from ranch work after I have made a plan. If I am to run this, I need numbers I can trust." "You will have them." Myra waited. Jonas met her eyes, the truth from now on. Only then did she turn back to the shutter. By noon, the lodge had begun to wake under protest. Dust flew from rugs beaten over the rail. 2 ranch women, Mrs. Prout and her niece Ada, came from the worker cottages to ask whether paid work was truly being offered. Myra looked at their worn shawls, reddened hands, and guarded hope. Paid every Saturday, she said. Not favors, not extra chores hidden under kindness. Work written down, wages counted fair. Mrs. Prout glanced toward Jonas, who was planing the west door. Myra saw the look. "You answer to me in the lodge," she said. Ada, a round-faced girl with quick eyes, smiled before she could stop herself. "Yes, ma'am." Myra almost corrected the ma'am. Then she let it stand. All afternoon they sorted the place into piles: keep, mend, scrub, burn. Broken shutters leaned against the wall. Old linens went into boiling water. Sound chairs were turned upside down for tightening. Chipped plates were counted for kitchen use, while the best dishes were stacked for guests. Myra made lists for everything. Lydia returned once with a basket of bread ends and soup bones. "For the workers," she said. Myra looked at the basket. "Are these a gift from the house or a charge against the lodge?" Lydia paused. Jonas stopped planing. Mrs. Prout pretended not to listen. "At present," Lydia said carefully, "a gift." Myra shook her head. "Charge it at fair kitchen value." "You would charge yourself for bones." "I would rather owe a ledger than a household." Lydia's face grew still, then she gave one short nod. "Very well." When she left, Jonas resumed his work without comment. Myra noticed that too. Near dusk, the west door finally closed without scraping. Jonas opened it and shut it twice more, as if proving the repair to himself. Myra stood in the center room, dirt on her cheek, her back aching, the notebook heavy with costs. The lodge looked no prettier than it had that morning. But it looked claimed. Ada had set 3 clean lamps on the counter. Mrs. Prout had coaxed fire into the kitchen range. Fresh water stood in buckets near the bath chamber. The first washed sheets hung across lines in the warm air, ghost pale and dripping. Myra pressed her thumb against the brass key at her waist. Jonas came beside her, leaving a respectful space. "You did more in one day than I expected," he said. "I have been doing more than expected since I was 14. "I believe that." She looked at him then. Not warmly, not yet. But directly. "You should have believed it before you married me." His eyes lowered. Yes. There was no excuse behind the word. That made it harder to keep hating him cleanly. Outside, a wagon rattled near the yard. A ranch boy ran up to the lodge door, breathless from the cold. "Mr. Rusk," he called. "Stage driver says the South Bridge washed weak. He asks if there's any chance of supper for 5 men coming through tomorrow." Myra turned before Jonas could answer. "The lodge is not open." The boy's face fell. Myra looked around at the half-scrubbed tables, damp linens, crooked chairs, and one working stove. A sensible woman would say no. A proud woman would say no faster. But Myra had not asked for 90 days to be sensible, only when it was easy. She opened her notebook. "Tell the driver 5 men may have stew, coffee, and floor space near the stove," she said. "No beds, no bath unless they pay extra and carry their own water to rinse the tile after." The boy grinned. "Yes, ma'am." Jonas looked at her. "Tomorrow." Myra closed the notebook. "Yes," she said, though her heart had started beating hard. "Tomorrow." The old bath lodge had been locked for 12 years. By sundown the next day, strangers would be eating under its roof. And Myra Whitlock Rusk would learn whether a door opened with a brass key could also open into a future. The first paying supper at the bath lodge began with a burned onion and a missing coffee pot. Myra found the onion blackening in the bottom of the iron range, while Ada stood frozen beside it, both hands pressed to her cheeks, as if she had ruined Christmas instead of one vegetable. "I am sorry, Mrs. Rusk," Ada whispered. I turned away only a moment. Then turn back now, Mara said, scraping the onion out with a flat knife. A burned onion is not a funeral. Slice 2 more thin and mind the flame. Ada blinked, then nodded fast. Mrs. Prout searched the cupboards for the coffee pot and found instead 3 cracked pitchers, a mouse-chewed hymn book, and a tin funnel with no handle. The stage men were due before dusk. The tables had been scrubbed twice, but one still smelled faintly of old varnish and damp wool. The floor near the spring room refused to dry. The beds were not ready, which did not matter because Mara had promised no beds, only floor space. She had promised stew, coffee, and warmth. At the moment, she possessed stew not yet thickened, coffee without a pot, and warmth that fogged the windows so badly a traveler might think the building was on fire. Myra stood in the center room, closed her eyes for one breath, then opened them. Mrs. Prout boiled coffee in the small bean kettle and strain it through clean muslin. Ada, more onions, keep them pale, no heroics, I will set the tables. From the doorway came Jonas's voice. Do you need anything? Myra did not turn. A coffee pot. I can send to the house. No. Myra. She faced him then. He stood with his hat in one hand and his work coat still dusty from the north fence. His expression was careful, as if every word had to pass through wire before reaching her. If the house lends the lodge a coffee pot, he said, it does not mean you have failed. It means the first supper begins with borrowed silver and borrowed pride. A coffee pot is not silver. It is if Lydia counts it. One corner of his mouth almost moved. She would. Mara hated that she nearly smiled. Jonas looked toward the kitchen, where Mrs. Prout was now holding up the bean kettle with an expression of deep suspicion. There is an old camp pot in the tack room. It has boiled coffee for men who complained less than paying guests. Is it clean? It can be. Then clean it. He nodded once and went. That was one thing Mara had begun to understand about Jonas Rusk. When given a useful order, he did not look wounded by it. He obeyed it like a man glad to know where to put his hands. The stage wagon came just as the last light fell behind the ridge. It arrived with 5 men, 2 muddy valises, 1 driver with a cold in his nose, and a mule seller who declared before stepping down that he had slept in worse places and eaten better places, but rarely both at once. Mara stood in the open doorway with her apron clean enough from the waist up. Rooms are not ready, she said. Supper is 2 bits, coffee included. Floor space near the stove is 1 bit. Warm bath is extra, and any man who leaves mud in my spring room cleans it before breakfast. The mule seller stared at her. The driver laughed. You hear that, Beeks? Woman has rules before she has customers. A business without rules is a bucket without a bottom, Myra said. The driver removed his hat. Fair enough, ma'am. They came in stamping cold from their boots. Their voices filled the long, quiet room so suddenly that the lodge seemed to flinch awake. Chairs scraped. Tin cups knocked against the table. Steam rose from bowls of stew, thick with beans, onion, salt pork, and carrots Lydia had sold to the lodge at garden price after a debate that left both women flushed and neither defeated. Jonas did not sit at the head of anything. He carried firewood, then stepped outside. Myra noticed. So did the stage driver. Your husband eating with us? He asked. Myra set down a coffee cup. My husband owns cattle. I own tonight's supper. The table went quiet for half a second. Then the driver grinned. Best arrangement I ever heard. The stew held. The coffee was strong enough to float a horseshoe. The camp pot left a smoky taste in it, but the men drank 2 rounds and asked for a third. One complained the bread was plain. Ada heard him and looked ready to cry. Mara set another slice on his plate. Plain bread is cheaper than fancy bread. You may pay fancy tomorrow if you warn me today. The man stared, then chuckled. Plain is fine. By 9 o'clock, 3 had paid for baths. Mara stood in the spring room doorway and watched the warm mineral water pour through the stone channel into the shallow tiled basin. The tiles were stained in places, cracked in others, but after a day of scrubbing, they shone in the lamplight like old bone. Steam curled through the air. The first traveler stepped in with a sigh so deep it sounded nearly indecent. "Worth the extra bit?" Mara asked. "Lady," the man said, sinking lower, "I would pay too if you do not tell the others." "I will tell the others and charge them the same." He laughed against the steam. By midnight, the men were asleep on blankets near the stove. Mrs. Prude had gone home with her wages written in the book and counted into her hand. Ada had fallen asleep sitting upright on a flour sack. Mara covered her with a clean towel before counting the evening's money. Coins lay on the office desk. Not many, but not none. Jonas came in quietly carrying the cleaned camp pot. Last man asleep. If snoring counts as sleep. It usually does. He set the pot down. His gaze went to the coins, then away. That mattered. Mara counted again. After food, lamp oil, and wages, we have earned less than a torn boot. But earned. She looked at the coins a long time. Yes. Outside, the wind pressed against the glass roof. Inside, the spring whispered beneath the floorboards. Jonas stood near the doorway. "I owe you an apology for today." Mara's head lifted. "Only today." "For today in particular." "Go on." "I offered the house coffee pot too quickly. I thought I was helping. I was making the choice smaller." She leaned back in the chair, tired enough that anger came slower now. "You keep doing that." "I know. You see a problem and reach for money, rooms, servants, supplies, answers." "It is what I have." "No," Mara said. "It is what you own, it is not all you have." The words seemed to strike him somewhere quiet. He looked at his hands. "What else do I have?" She should not have answered. It would have been safer not to. But the day had been long, and the room was warm, and he had cleaned a filthy camp pot without complaint. "A back strong enough to carry wood," she said. "Enough sense to fix a door, enough shame to listen when it would be easier to command. Start there." Jonas looked at her then, not with surprise exactly, but with something more dangerous. "Hope." Mara closed the account book. "Do not make too much of that." "I will try not to." "Try harder." This time, the corner of his mouth did move. Before dawn, the stage men left with coffee in their bellies and steam still clinging to their coats. The driver paid for an extra loaf wrapped in cloth and asked whether the lodge would be open the following week. Mara stood straighter. "It will." "Got a name?" She had not thought that far. The old Bath Lodge was not enough. Rusk Ridge Lodge was too much Jonas. Mara's place was too much herself, and she did not yet know if she belonged here. Her eyes went to the warm mist touching the glass panes. "Warm spring rooms," she said. The driver nodded. "I will pass it along." When the wagon rolled out, Ada came to stand beside Mara, yawning into her sleeve. "Do you think more will come?" Mara watched the road until dust swallowed the wheels. "If he passes it along," she said, "yes." Jonas appeared on the porch behind her. Lydia stood farther back near the kitchen passage, pretending she had not come to listen. Mara felt the brass key at her waist and the account book under her arm. One night had not repaired a marriage. It had not forgiven a lie. It had not made the mansion less grand or the truth less broken. But 5 strangers had slept warm, 5 men had paid, and the old locked wing had a name. If you believe love means nothing without choice, stay with this story. Because on Rusk Ridge, Mara Whitlock Rusk had just earned her first coins, and the sound of them in the cash box was small, bright, and powerful enough to trouble every quiet room in the house. For the next 9 days, Mara learned that a business did not grow like a flower. It grew like bread dough. It had to be warmed, worked, watched, punched down, and worked again. Warm spring rooms did not fill overnight. Some days no traveler came at all, and the empty tables made every lamp seem wasteful. On those evenings, Mara used the quiet to scrub baseboards, sew mattress ticking, and teach Ada how to fold sheets tight enough to bounce a coin. Other days, riders arrived without warning and expected miracles. A family of 4 came through with a sick grandmother who needed the warm bath but could not climb the tiled step. Mara found 2 planks, wrapped them in old sacking, and made Jonas brace them with blocks so the old woman could be guided safely down. A clock peddler complained that the coffee tasted of smoke. Mara sold him tea at twice the price and watched him drink every drop. 2 cowboys tried to sleep in the stable without paying for floor space. Mrs. Prout found them, and by sunrise they had paid with coins and split firewood. Every mistake became a rule. Every rule went into Mara's notebook. No bath after 9 unless arranged before supper. Stable space paid before horses are unsaddled. Coffee refills free with meals, not with floor space. Torn sheets charged to guest unless caused by lodge nails. Mud scraped outside. Complaints accepted before eating, not after an empty plate. Jonas read the rules one evening while standing by the office desk. "Torn sheets charged to guest unless caused by lodge nails," he said. Mara dipped her pen. "Room 3 has a nail on the bed frame. I marked it. I will fix it before breakfast." "You will fix the latch on the rear pantry before breakfast. The nail can wait." He looked up. "You made a repair order for me." "I made a repair order for the owner of the building." "That seems to be me." "Then congratulations on your employment." He lowered the paper, and for a moment she thought he might laugh. Not a full laugh. Jonas Rusk did not seem built for easy laughter, but something in his face loosened like a gate hinge freed from rust. "What is my wage?" he asked. "Marriage has already overpaid you." The words slipped out before she could stop them. The room went quiet. Jonas did not answer quickly. He folded the repair list once, careful along the crease. "I suppose it has." Mara looked down at the ledger, ashamed of the sharpness and unwilling to soften it. The truth was strange. She still woke angry. She still looked at the mansion and felt trapped by all she had not known. Yet she had also begun to look for Jonas at dawn, listening for the slow step of his boots outside the lodge door and the scrape of tools against wood. That did not forgive him, but it complicated him. On the 12th morning of the 90 days, Lydia arrived at the lodge carrying a basket covered with white cloth. Mara was bent over the pantry shelf, counting jars of peaches left from the old stores. "If those are household preserves, charge them." "They are not preserves." Lydia set the basket on the counter and lifted the cloth. Inside were 8 brass room numbers, dull with tarnish. "They belong to the lodge," Lydia said. "Abigail had them fixed to the doors when the spring house first opened." Mara picked one up, number 4. The metal was cold and greened at the edges. "I did not see these in inventory. They were in my keeping." Mara understood what that meant, not hidden from theft, guarded from memory. "Why bring them now?" Lydia's gaze moved toward the hall, where Ada was singing softly while shaking out a rug. "Because men asking for the second door past the cracked basin offends order." Mara rubbed the tarnished number with her thumb. "Order. Do not look pleased. I have not blessed the enterprise. I would never accuse you of such softness." Lydia's eyes narrowed, but her mouth almost betrayed her. "See that you do not." They worked side by side for half an hour, polishing the numbers with ash and vinegar. The task was small, quiet, and oddly intimate. Lydia handled each piece as if it still carried her sister's touch. Mara did not ask questions. She knew grief sometimes came closer when nobody stared at it. When the numbers were clean, Jonas fixed them to the doors. He stood back from room 6 with the hammer in his hand. "Looks more proper." "It looks like travelers can find their beds without wandering into the broom closet," Mara said. "Also proper." Lydia corrected the angle of number 2 after he left. Mara let her. That afternoon, a ranch wife named Bet Givens brought 2 girls to ask for washing work. Mara could not afford them both, but she offered 1 paid day a week if they proved steady. Bet twisted her shawl in her hands. Folks say you pay cash. Every Saturday. They also say you write everything in a book. I do. Even mistakes. Especially mistakes. The older girl, Nell, lifted her chin. I can wash towels better than my sister. Her sister gasped, You cannot. Myra looked between them. Then I will take both for one trial day and pay the better washer for another. Bet's eyes widened. That will set them fighting. No, Myra said, it will set them working. From the doorway, Jonas made a sound that might have been a cough or a buried laugh. Myra did not look at him, but she felt the warmth of it. By the third week, warm spring rooms had 6 proper beds, 4 patch shutters, a mended porch rail, a working rear pantry, and a cash box that no longer sounded lonely when lifted. The money was still thin after supplies and wages, but it was real. Myra counted it each Saturday in the little office, with the door closed and the brass key laid beside the ledger. Jonas never entered during counting. Not once. He knocked if he needed her. That mattered more than Myra wished it did. One Saturday evening, she opened the door and found him sitting on the step outside, elbows on knees, hat hanging from his fingers. The sky beyond the courtyard had turned violet. From the main house came the faint sound of Lydia directing supper. From the lodge kitchen came Ada scolding a kettle as if it were a stubborn mule. You waiting for me? Myra asked. Yes. Why? Jonas looked up. I wanted to ask before I did something. That was new. Myra crossed her arms. Ask. The South Corral men need a hot meal tomorrow. Fence crew, 12 of them. I thought to send them here and pay the lodge rate from ranch accounts. Myra stared at him. Your own men. Yes. To eat at a business on your property. Yes. Paid from your accounts. Yes. That sounds like moving money from one pocket to another and calling it income. It is an expense either way. If Lydia feeds them, the ranch pays for beef, bread, coffee, and labor from the main kitchen. If you feed them, the ranch pays the lodge for the same. Myra hated that he had brought a sensible idea. She hated more that he had asked. Regular price, she said. I expected nothing else. And they follow lodge rules. Mud outside. No taking coffee to the bath chamber. No leaning chairs back on 2 legs. Jonas rose. That last rule personal. A man cracked the rear chair yesterday. I will tell them. No, Myra said, I will tell them. The next day, 12 fence riders came in with mud to their knees and hunger in their eyes. They began loud, but quieted when Myra stood at the head of the room with her account book under one arm. You are not eating in the bunkhouse, she said. You are eating in warm spring rooms. Supper is paid by ranch account, but broken dishes are paid by the man who breaks them. Boots are scraped outside, hats off at the table. Anyone who frightens Ada gets no pie. A red-haired hand near the back grinned. What if Ada frightens us? Ada, carrying a coffee pot, said, Then you still get no pie. The room broke into laughter. Myra looked over and saw Jonas standing in the doorway, his eyes on her, not proud as an owner, not amused as a man watching a passing show. Proud as if her strength had cost him something to learn, and he was grateful to pay it. She looked away first. That evening, after the fence men left and the room smelled of beef gravy, coffee, and cold wool, Myra counted the day's receipts. It was the largest amount yet. Ranch account or not, the meal had paid fair. Mrs. Pruitt had earned extra. Ada had sold every slice of pie. Nell and her sister had washed towels until their arms ached and still asked when they might return. The cash box felt heavier. Myra should have felt only triumph. Instead, as she entered the numbers, she saw the truth forming like frost on glass. This lodge was no longer just her road out. It had become useful to the place she might leave. A knock sounded. Come in, she said. Jonas opened the door but did not cross the threshold. Stage driver stopped at the barn. Says a newspaper man in Silver Bend wants to print a line about warm spring rooms if we send wording by Monday. Mara's pen stilled. A newspaper. Small column, traveler's notices. She looked at the ledger, then at the warm lamplight beyond the office, where Ada was sweeping crumbs into a pan and Mrs. Prout was humming under her breath. A line in the paper would bring strangers, more meals, more baths, more money, more proof that she could stand without anyone holding her up. It would also tie her name to Rusk Ridge. What wording? Jonas asked. Myra closed the ledger slowly. She could advertise comfort, warm baths, clean rooms, good meals, fair prices. But the words that came to mind surprised her. A place for the road-weary, she said. Jonas repeated it softly. A place for the road-weary. Myra nodded. Then she looked past him, through the open lodge door, toward the great stone house glowing at the far end of the covered walk. She had come to Rusk Ridge road-weary herself. That did not mean she had arrived home. Not yet. But for the first time, she wondered whether a woman could build a place for others before she knew whether she belonged inside it. And that question troubled her more deeply than anger ever had. The newspaper line brought more people than Mara expected. By the fourth morning after it appeared in the Silver Bend Gazette, 3 riders came before noon asking whether the warm baths truly ran from the hill and whether supper cost less than a night at the Freight Hotel. By sundown, a widow and her 2 sons arrived with a wagon wheel cracked on stone. The next day brought a schoolteacher on her way to Cotton Plain, 2 wool buyers, a preacher with a wet cough, and a young mother who looked so tired that Mara gave her a chair before asking for payment. Warm spring rooms was no longer waking. It was being shaken by both shoulders. Mara's notebook filled faster than the cash box. Flour, beans, lamp oil, soap, coffee, candles, axle grease for the stable, vinegar for laundry, baking powder, 2 new chamber pots, 6 tin cups, 3 wool blankets, and 1 proper coffee pot bought in town with lodge money. Not borrowed. Bought. She wrote that word twice in the ledger. Jonas saw it when he came in before dawn to repair the porch rail. You bought a coffee pot, he said. Myra kept sorting towels. I did. Should I admire it? It holds coffee without tasting like saddle smoke, so yes. He crossed to the kitchen shelf and looked at the pot with solemn attention. Fine shape. Do not mock the first respectable purchase of this establishment. I would not dare. The words were light, but his hands were already roughened from work. He had been out in the north pasture past dark the night before, then came to the lodge before sunrise because room 5's window still rattled in wind. Mara watched him test the frame with his thumb. You do not have to do that this morning, she said. You wrote it under urgent. That was before I saw you come in after moonrise. He looked over his shoulder. The wind did not sleep late because I did. Mara turned away before he could see her face soften. It happened more often now, that dangerous softening. She fought it by working harder. There was plenty of work to hide inside. Warm spring rooms needed another table, but Lydia refused to lend one from the main house. It needed a second dining space, but the only suitable room sat beyond a paneled door in the covered passage, an unused sun parlor that belonged to Rusk Ridge, not the lodge. Through its tall windows, Mara could see dust on covered furniture and a cold fireplace with blue tiles around it. A room large enough for 8 guests to eat while waiting for baths. A room locked by Lydia. Mara waited 3 days before asking. She found Lydia in the main house pantry, checking jars of preserved pears. The pantry was neat enough to make a general weep with envy. Every shelf was labeled. Every crock had a cloth tied flat across the top. Lydia held a pencil like a weapon. I need the sun parlor, Mara said. No. You have not asked why. I assumed you would tell me anyway. For meals, the lodge room is too crowded when guests arrive before stage hour. The spring chamber is too damp for eating, and the kitchen is too hot. The sun parlor is part of the family house. It is shut. It is not empty. I will not move anything without your approval. You will not move anything at all. Mara folded her hands in front of her apron. Mrs. Harrow, I can feed 8 more guests a night in that room. Then feed 8 fewer. 8 fewer means less money for the lodge, less work for Ada and Mrs. Prout, less feed bought from ranch stores, and less reason for travelers to stop here instead of riding on to Silver Bend. Lydia marked a jar with her pencil. You are learning to sound like a Rusk. Mara's chin lifted. No, I am learning to sound like myself where people can hear me. At that, Lydia finally turned. Her expression was stern but not cold. There was worry beneath it, tight and old. My sister drank tea in that room, Lydia said. Jonas's mother sat there when she no longer had strength to cross the yard. She watched the lodge windows from that chair by the south glass. Mara's anger loosened. I did not know. No, Lydia said. You did not. This house is full of things people do not know before they ask to use them. The words might have been a rebuke, but they did not land only on Mara. They carried Jonas's secret too, and Lydia knew it. Mara looked toward the passage. Then show me which chair was hers, I will not move it. You think that is enough? No, I think it is a beginning. Lydia looked back at her jars. For a moment, the pantry seemed to hold its breath. I will consider it, she said. That meant no. But it was not the same no as before. That evening, the lodge filled with travelers driven in by a hard rain. Mud reached the porch. Coats steamed beside the stove. Ada burned her wrist on the range and tried not to cry. Mrs. Prout ran out of clean bowls and served beans in cups. 2 men argued over the last dry corner near the fire until Mara handed them each a broom and made the argument useful. Jonas came in from the barn carrying saddle blankets for extra bedding. Water ran from his hat brim. Mara looked up from the ledger. Are those from the lodge account? They are from the barn. Then the lodge rents them. He nodded. At what rate? Enough that your men will remember to dry them properly. He accepted that without blinking and went to lay them near the stove. Near midnight, after every traveler had been fed and every wet coat hung, Mara found him in the kitchen washing tin cups. His sleeves were soaked to the elbow. A lantern burned low over the work table. Outside, rain hammered the glass roof like thrown pebbles. You own the largest house in the valley, she said, and you are washing cups in my kitchen. He glanced down at the cup in his hand. I dirtied one. You dirtied one, you have washed 12. I lost count. Rich men always do. His mouth moved faintly. Fair. She took a towel and began drying because standing idle felt too intimate. For a while, only rain and tins sounded between them. Then Jonas said, Lydia refused the sun parlor. She said she would consider it. That usually means she has refused and wants time to sharpen the refusal. Myra dried another cup. It was your mother's room. Yes. You did not tell me. You asked Lydia. The answer made her hands still. He did not step in. He did not explain for Lydia. He did not hand Mara the room because he owned the house and could. He let the matter remain where Mara had placed it. Between 2 women with different claims. Thank you, she said. Jonas looked at her, surprised enough to show it. For what? For not making my argument smaller. He set the washed cup down carefully. I am trying to learn the size of things before I touch them. That sentence stayed with her after she left the kitchen. The next morning, Myra found the sun parlor unlocked. Lydia stood inside alone, dust cloth in hand. Pale light filled the glass room. The furniture was uncovered now. 3 cane chairs, a round table, 2 narrow benches, and 1 wingback chair beside the south window. The wingback had faded blue cloth and a cushion pressed thin from years of use. My sister's chair stays, Lydia said. Yes. No serving trays on the piano. There is no piano in here. I am saying it now, in case you get ideas elsewhere. Myra looked at the room, then at Lydia. 8 guests, no more until we see whether the floorboards hold the traffic. 12 could fit. 8 can eat without elbows and gravy. Lydia studied her. You do not grab all you are offered. I have been offered too many things that came with strings. The older woman's gaze dropped for a breath, then rose again. I will lend the room for 30 days. Rent it, Mara said. Lydia frowned. What? The lodge rents the room from the household, a fair amount, written in both books. That is unnecessary. No, Mara said softly, it is necessary to me. Lydia looked at her for a long time. Then she reached to her waist, removed a small iron key, and placed it on the round table between them. 30 days, she said. Mara picked up the key. It was not as heavy as the brass lodge key, but it weighed differently. That night, the first supper in the sun parlor served 6 travelers, 1 schoolteacher, and the tired young mother, who ate slowly while her children slept near the stove. Lydia passed through once to inspect the room and stayed to straighten a folded napkin. Mara did not move it back. Jonas noticed from the doorway. He also wisely said nothing. After supper, Mara stepped outside into the courtyard. Rain had washed the air clean. Warm light glowed from the lodge windows and from the borrowed sun parlor beyond the covered passage. The 2 places no longer looked entirely separate. They looked connected by work, by argument, by need. Jonas came to stand beside her, leaving the space he always left. 30 days, he asked. 30 days. And after that? Mara touched the iron key in her apron pocket. After that, I either lose the room, rent it again, or earn enough that Lydia cannot bear to close it. Jonas looked at the windows. She respects you. She is suspicious of me. With Lydia, that comes first. Mara almost smiled. Then the smile faded as a thought rose sharp and sudden. How many days have passed? She asked. Jonas did not pretend not to know. 27. 27. Nearly a third of the bargain. Mara looked at the lodge she had reopened, the room she had rented, the people eating because she had chosen prices and bought coffee and counted towels. She had come here planning to earn her way out. Now every useful thing she did tied another small thread to the place. Jonas stood beside her in silence. The danger was no longer that he might trap her. The danger was that she might build something strong enough to make leaving hurt. On the 31st day, warm spring rooms ran out of beds. Not clean beds, not good beds, beds altogether. The trouble came with the westbound stage, which rolled into Rusk Ridge at dusk carrying 10 passengers instead of 4, with 1 wheel band cracked and a driver who used the word temporary as if it could mend iron. I can reach Silver Bend by midnight if I nurse her slow, the driver said. Mara looked at the wheel, then at the darkening sky, then at the passengers climbing down stiff and cold from the wagon. 1 elderly man held his back. A young couple carried a sleeping child between them. 2 women in travel cloaks looked at the warm-lit lodge windows with the desperate hope of people who had been bounced half to pieces all day. You will not reach Silver Bend tonight, Mara said. The driver rubbed his jaw. I was afraid you would say that. I was afraid you would make me. Inside, the lodge already had 3 rooms taken. The sun parlor held supper guests. The spring chamber had 2 baths waiting. Ada was flour to her elbows. Mrs. Prout was carving salt pork thin enough to see lamplight through it. Mara stood in the office doorway, doing figures in her head. 6 proper beds, 2 cots, 3 saddle blankets, 1 narrow bench in the sun parlor, floor space near the stove. The young couple could have room 2 with the child. The old man needed room 1 because it sat closest to the privy door. The women could share room 5 if Mara moved the cracked washstand out. The 2 wool buyers already in room 3 might complain, but they had paid for 1 bed each, not a kingdom. She lifted her voice. Ada, stretch the stew with beans. Mrs. Prout, cut more bread. Nell, bring every dry blanket from the shelf, not the blue-marked household ones. Lodge linen only. From behind her, Jonas said, the bunkhouse has spare blankets. Myra turned, rent or purchase. Neither, they are rough. So are hungry travelers, what price? He took half a second too long. Myra's eyes narrowed, Jonas. They can be used without charge. No. Myra, it is cold. That is why I am willing to pay fair. The old argument might have risen between them, but Jonas stopped it by removing his gloves. 2 cents each for the night, written as ranch equipment rental, he said. 1 cent, they smell like horses. They smell like clean horses. 1 cent. His mouth pulled at the corner, agreed. The driver watched them as if he had bought a ticket to a play. By 9 o'clock, warm spring rooms looked less like a lodging house and more like a well-managed storm. Travelers ate in shifts. The old man took his bath first and came out walking straighter. The child woke long enough to ask for honey, then fell asleep with bread in one fist. One of the cloaked women, a seamstress from Denver, noticed Myra rescuing a torn pillowcase and took the needle from her hand. You feed them, the woman said. I will stitch. I pay for work. I will take supper credit. Half supper credit, Myra said. Your stitching is crooked at the corners. The seamstress laughed and stitched anyway. Jonas carried water, chopped kindling, fixed the bent wheel band enough to keep it from splitting further, then came inside to find Myra standing at the office desk over 2 columns of figures. Bad, he asked. Crowded. That was not my question. She dipped her pen. Profitable if no one breaks a chair. A loud crack sounded from the main room. Myra closed her eyes. Jonas turned his head. A man's voice called, chair was weak before I sat. Myra opened her eyes. Find out if the man is weak too. Jonas's shoulders shook once. Do not laugh, she said. I would not dare. But he was smiling when he went. Near midnight, the last guest settled under a rented bunkhouse blanket by the stove. The lodge smelled of coffee, wet wool, mineral steam, and bread crust. Myra's feet ached so fiercely that standing still felt like punishment. She carried the cash box to the office, shut the door, and counted every coin. Then she counted again. The amount was large enough to make her sit back. Not fortune, not comfort forever, but more than any single day of her life had ever given her. She wrote wages first. Mrs. Prout, Ada, Nell, seamstress supper credit, blanket rental, extra beans from ranch stores. Wheel repair labor billed separately because Jonas had fixed it as ranch owner, not lodge hand. She stared at that line. Jonas Rusk, wheel repair. No charge marked. She opened the office door. He sat on the floor outside the spring room, tightening a loose hinge on a towel rack by lamplight. What is your charge for the wheel band? She asked. He glanced up. No charge. Wrong answer. I repaired it for the stage driver, not the lodge. The stage driver came because of the lodge. The driver will pay me in town next week. Then write that somewhere I can see it. He set the screwdriver down and looked at her. You think I am hiding money in kindness. I think you are accustomed to deciding which favors count. The words landed hard, but not unfairly. Jonas rose. I will bring you a note from the driver. Good. He nodded once. Myra expected him to leave. Instead, he remained near the doorway, hat in his hand though he had been indoors for hours. What? She asked. He looked toward the sleeping room doors, then back at her. You saved the night. I arranged it. You held it together. That is what arrangement means when people are tired and hungry. Myra. His voice was soft enough to make her look up. He said, I did not know how much skill there was in what you had done all those years. She grew still. The praise should have pleased her. Instead, it opened something tender and sore. For 12 years, she had been useful in rooms where no one saw usefulness as worth naming. Beds made, floors washed, fires laid, accounts corrected secretly when hotel owners drank too much and wrote wrong numbers, guests soothed, maids trained, meals stretched, wages chased. Her whole life had been labor people noticed only when it failed. Jonas seemed to understand he had touched more than business. "I should have known," he said. "You could not have known everything." "No, but I could have respected what I did not know." Mara looked down at the ledger. The lamplight blurred for a moment, and she blinked until the numbers sharpened. From the main room came the child's sleepy murmur. From the spring room came the hush of warm water moving under stone. "You are late learning," she said. "I am. You keep admitting that." "I am trying not to waste breath defending what I cannot defend." She closed the ledger. "That may be the wisest thing you have done." He gave a small nod, but there was no smile this time. The next morning, the crowded lodge woke hungry and grateful. The stage driver inspected the patched wheel, declared it good enough for Silver Bend, and paid Mara for coffee, bread, floor space, and one broken chair after Jonas stood beside the chair and silently pointed to the crack. The driver grumbled. Mara held out her hand. "He paid." Before leaving, the Denver seamstress asked for paper. Mara gave her a torn half-sheet from the office. The woman wrote a note and pinned it beside the door with one of Mara's sewing needles. "Best hot bath between Denver Road and Silver Bend. Rules strict. Food worth obeying them." Ada read it aloud 3 times. Mrs. Prout laughed until she had to sit down. Mara pretended to be busy with cups, but she cut the note square and placed it flat inside the account book before the wind could take it. That afternoon, after the stage rolled out, Mara went to Silver Bend with Jonas to buy supplies. She sat beside him on the wagon seat, the cash box under her feet, her shopping list in her lap. The road down from Rusk Ridge curved through yellow grass and cedar scrub. For once, neither of them spoke of lies or leaving. They spoke of prices. 10 plates, Mara said, 8 more. 10, Jonas said, 2 will vanish. People do not steal tin plates. Men steal anything not nailed down if they think it belongs to another man. Then I will nail down the men. He looked at her, and this time he did laugh. It was brief, rough, and surprised out of him, but it changed his whole face. Myra looked away quickly. Silver Bend's mercantile smelled of molasses, leather, and stove polish. Mara bargained so hard over lamp oil that the storekeeper finally threw in 2 boxes of matches just to end the conversation. Jonas stood back the whole time, letting her speak. When the man tried to appeal to him with a "Mr. Rusk knows quality costs," Jonas only said, "Mrs. Rusk knows the lodge account better than I do." Mara did not look at him then either. But she felt the words settle. On the way home, they passed a posting board outside the freight office. A newspaper sheet flapped there in the wind. Mara saw the advertisement by accident. Boarding house for lease, Pueblo Freight District, furnished kitchen, reasonable deposit. Pueblo, a town large enough to swallow a woman and give her work if she had money to begin. Far enough from Rusk Ridge that nobody would call her Mrs. Rusk unless she chose to tell them. Close enough to reach by stage. She read the line twice. Jonas saw her reading. He did not speak until she looked away. "Do you want me to stop?" he asked. Mara's hand tightened on the shopping list. "No." He flicked the reins gently. The wagon moved on. No argument, no wounded look, no reminder of the lodge or the rooms or the work waiting. That silence followed her back to Rusk Ridge. For 3 days, she did not mention the advertisement. She worked instead. She trained Nell and her sister on towels. She set a fair rate for ranch meals. She made Ada practice sums until the girls stopped guessing and started calculating. She watched Lydia inspect the sun parlor and correct a flower vase by 2 inches. But at night, after the lodge quieted, Mara took out a newspaper someone had left behind and looked again for the Pueblo notice. There it was. Still available. Maybe. On the 42nd day, Mara wrote to the freight office asking for terms. She folded the letter, sealed it, and carried it outside before courage could cool. Jonas was repairing a shutter near the porch, the morning sun touching the silver in his dark hair. "I need this posted," Mara said. He took the letter. His eyes dropped to the direction. Pueblo Freight District. Only for a moment. Then he looked back at her. "I will see it goes out today." Mara waited for him to ask if she meant to leave. He did not. That was what made her heart ache. Tell me in the comments, would you forgive a husband who hid a fortune before the wedding? Mara watched Jonas tuck the letter safely inside his coat. The man who had once hidden the truth to keep her near was now carrying her road away in his own pocket. And neither of them knew yet whether that was love, punishment, or the first honest thing they had ever built. The answer from Pueblo took 6 days to arrive. By then, Mara had learned how to work while pretending not to wait. She rose before dawn, checked the kitchen fire, counted yesterday's towels, inspected the guest rooms, and corrected Ada's sums in the margin of the account book. She argued with a flour seller over a short sack and won. She sent 2 ranch boys to scrub mud from the stable boards because their boots had carried it into the spring room. She showed Nell how to hang bath linen, where steam would warm it without dampening it through. All the while, a part of her listened for hooves from the mail road. On the 48th afternoon, a rider brought letters to Rusk Ridge. Jonas carried them to the lodge himself. Mara was in the sun parlor setting cups for 4 supper guests. He stopped at the doorway and held out one envelope. His face told her he knew what it was. "From Pueblo," he said. Her fingers left the cup handle slowly. Lydia stood near the window arranging a bowl of late asters. She looked from the letter to Mara, then said nothing. That silence was not disapproval, it was attention. Mara took the envelope. The paper was cheap, thin enough that she could almost see the words inside before breaking the seal. She wished suddenly that she had opened it alone. She wished Jonas were not standing there with dust on his coat and no claim in his eyes. She wished Lydia would make one sharp remark and turn the moment into anger, because anger was easier than this. But nobody rescued her from her own choice. She opened the letter. The boarding house in the Pueblo Freight District remained available. The deposit was lower than she had feared. The owner wanted a woman with lodging experience and steady references. The kitchen was furnished, 6 upstairs rooms, small dining space, backyard with wash lines. Lease could begin within 30 days. Mara read it twice. The words did not look like freedom on the page. They looked like a door in another town. Jonas spoke quietly, "Good terms." "Yes." Lydia's hand tightened around one aster stem. Mara folded the letter and slid it into her apron pocket. "Supper is at 6. Ada, set 2 extra places in case the stage sends late riders." Ada, who had been watching from the hall with a stack of plates, nearly dropped them. "Yes, ma'am." Work returned, but it did not cover the letter. Nothing did. That evening, after the guests were fed and the bath scrubbed, Mara sat in the little office with the cash box open. The coins and notes inside had changed since the first supper. Once, she had counted every piece like proof that she existed. Now the box had to be lifted with both hands if she moved it far. Its weight gave her comfort and fear in equal measure. She took out the Pueblo letter and set it beside the ledger. 6 rooms, furnished kitchen, reasonable deposit. She began making a second account page. Pueblo boarding house, possible costs. Deposit, first month's food. Coal, lamp oil, bedding replacement, freight for trunk, extra locks, signboard, emergency money, wages for 1 helper after first month if rooms filled. She worked until the numbers stopped being guesses and became a shape. It could be done. Not easily, not prettily, but honestly. A knock sounded at the office door. "Come," she said. Jonas opened it and remained outside the threshold, as always. In his hand was a folded paper. The stage driver paid for the wheel repair, he said. Here is the note. Myra took it. The driver's mark and amount were written plainly. The money would go to Jonas, not the lodge, exactly as he had promised. Thank you. His gaze moved once to the Pueblo figures, then back to her face. Do you need anything sent for from town? No. Do you want me to ask about stage fare? Her throat tightened. I can ask. I know. That was worse than if he had argued. Myra set down the note. Does it not trouble you? Yes. Then why do you keep helping? Jonas looked at the lamplight on the floor. Because I took choice from you once. His answer was plain, but it filled the small room. Myra waited for more, for longing, for apology repeated until it became pressure, for a promise that she would regret leaving, for anything she could push against. He only said, I will not do it again. Then he stepped back and left her with the ledger. The following morning, Lydia came to the lodge with a ring of keys and an expression Myra had learned to respect. It was the face Lydia wore when she had decided something and disliked needing to say it. You may extend the sun parlor use, Lydia said. Myra looked up from a crate of apples. For another 30 days. For the season. Myra straightened. At the same rent. At a higher rent, you are using it more. That is fair. I have written the amount. Lydia held out a folded paper. Myra opened it. The amount was stern but not cruel. She nodded, agreed. Lydia's gaze moved over the lodge. Ada was wiping tables. Nell was hanging towels. Mrs. Prout was grinding coffee. The warm windows glowed with morning steam. You have order here. I have work here. Order comes from work. Myra looked at the older woman more carefully. Is that why you guard the main house so hard? Lydia's jaw set. For a moment, Myra thought she had gone too far. Then Lydia answered. I came here at 19 after my sister married into the Rusk family. Abigail had laughter. Jonas's father had land. Neither of them had the patience for closets, wages, meals, medicine, guests, mourning, repairs, or the 100 small things that keep a great house from rotting while everyone admires the porch. Myra said nothing. Lydia touched the keys at her waist. After they died, order was what remained for Jonas. I guarded it because he did not know how to ask for care and would have given half the ranch away before admitting he needed any. He still gives too much away, Myra said. Yes, Lydia's eyes sharpened. But you count what things cost, that may be good for him. I am not here to improve him. No, Lydia said. You are here to decide whether he is worth staying with after he was foolish enough to lie to a woman who knows ledgers. Myra stared at her. Lydia turned toward the door. If you leave for Pueblo, take the blue wool blankets from the lodge shelves, not as a gift. They are part of the equipment you purchased through lodge earnings. I purchased 2, the rest are Abigail's. The rest are worn enough that I can call them retired without lying. Myra's voice softened despite herself. Why would you help me leave? Lydia looked back. The morning light caught the lines around her mouth. Because if you stay only because leaving is too cold, this house has gained a prisoner, not a wife. Then she left. Myra stood among apples and towels and steam, feeling the truth of that sentence settle in her bones. After that, Lydia changed in small ways, not warmly, never foolishly, but clearly. She began sending over garden counts before Myra asked. She marked which preserves were household stores and which could be bought by the lodge. She corrected Ada's napkin folding, then taught her properly when Ada huffed under her breath. She inspected the sun parlor less like a jailer and more like a woman trying not to show pride in a room behaving well. Jonas noticed. One night, after a supper of beef stew and corn cakes served to 14 guests, he found Myra on the back porch shaking crumbs from a tablecloth. Lydia told me she extended the parlor, he said. She raised the rent. That means she likes you. I would hate to see how she treats enemies. Lydia has no enemies, only people who fold linen wrong. Myra laughed before she could stop herself. It came out small and quick, but it was a real laugh and both of them heard it. The sound startled her. Jonas did not smile broadly. He did not seize the moment. He only looked at her with a softness that felt more dangerous than any touch. "I have missed that," he said. "You have never heard it." "No," he said, "but I have missed the chance." Myra looked down at the tablecloth in her hands. The night smelled of cedar, cold dust, and warm bread cooling inside. From the spring chamber came the gentle sound of water. From the main house came Lydia's distant voice instructing someone not to drag a chair. "I am still angry," Myra said. "I know. I still may leave. I know. And I do not want wanting to stay to become another thing I must fight." Jonas leaned one shoulder against the porch post, leaving the space between them open. "Then do not fight it for my sake. Look at it like any other account. What does it cost? What does it give? What cannot be measured yet?" She looked at him sharply. "You make marriage sound like a ledger." "I made marriage sound like a secret once. I am trying better tools." The answer should not have moved her. It did. On the 55th day, Warm Spring Rooms received its first proper booking ahead of time. A cattle buyer from Denver sent word that he wanted 2 rooms, supper for 4, and baths for his men after 3 days on the trail. He included a deposit. Myra held the coins in her hand and stood very still. Ada peered over her shoulder. "Is something wrong?" "No," Myra said, "something is changing." By now, travelers no longer asked for the old bath lodge. They asked for Warm Spring Rooms. They asked whether Mrs. Rusk was there. They asked whether the rules were as strict as people claimed and whether the baths were worth the scolding. Myra began making a sign for the office wall. "Rooms paid before key is given. Meals served at 6 unless road delay is honest. Baths extra. Respect shown to workers. No credit without written agreement. No man too rich to pay, no woman too poor to be treated cleanly." When Jonas read the last line, he stood silent for a long while. Then he said, "That one belongs above the door." Myra shook her head. "It belongs where I can see it." 2 nights later, the Denver cattle buyer arrived with his men. Supper went smoothly until one of them, a young fellow in a fancy vest, snapped his fingers at Ada for coffee. Ada froze. Myra turned from the stove. Before she could speak, Lydia did. She had been in the sun parlor checking curtain ties. She stepped into the dining room, straight-backed and calm. "At Rusk Ridge," Lydia said, "a man may call for coffee with his voice or fetch it with his legs. Fingers are for holding cups." The room went silent. The young man flushed, "Beg pardon." Ada's eyes grew round. Myra looked at Lydia. Lydia adjusted one cuff. "Mrs. Rusk is busy." Then she walked out. Later in the office, Myra counted the supper money while trying not to smile. Jonas knocked and entered only after she answered. "I heard Lydia defended Ada," he said. "She defended order. With Lydia, that comes first." Myra closed the cash box. It was heavy now. Heavy enough that she had to use both hands to lower it from the desk to the shelf. Jonas watched her lift it, but he did not offer to help. Not until she looked at him and said, "You may carry it to the lockbox." A quiet change passed across his face. Not triumph. Trust. He took the cash box carefully, as if the weight of it belonged to her even while in his hands. "Where?" he asked. "Bottom shelf, behind the flower ledger." He set it there and stepped back. Myra locked the cabinet herself. For a moment they stood close in the small office, not touching, not speaking, only close enough that the lamplight held them together. Then Ada called from the kitchen that the coffee pot had boiled over. Myra stepped away first. "That girl will drown us all in coffee before winter." Jonas opened the office door. "At least it is a respectable pot." She looked back at him. This time she let herself smile. It did not fix the lie. It did not decide Pueblo, it did not end the 90 days. But it was hers to give. And for the first time, Jonas Rusk received something from his wife that he had not bought, hidden, arranged, or asked for. He received it honestly. By the 62nd day, Mara knew the sound of money differently than she once had. When she had worked at the Desert Star Hotel, coins sounded like escape if she could keep enough of them hidden from rent, shoes, laundry soap, and hunger. A dime meant bread. A quarter meant one more week of a decent bed. A dollar meant danger because someone might ask why a maid had it. At Warm Spring Rooms, money sounded like proof. It clicked into the cash box after supper. It scraped across the office desk beneath her counting fingers. It turned into flour sacks, wages, lamp oil, clean blankets, repaired chairs, and one new copper-bottomed kettle Ada admired as if it were a palace jewel. But now the cash box had grown heavy enough that proof itself became a burden. Mara lifted it from the bottom shelf one Saturday evening and nearly dropped it on her boot. Jonas was standing by the office door with a list of stable repairs. He took one step forward, then stopped himself. Mara noticed. "You may help," she said. Only then did he move. He lifted the box with both hands and set it on the desk. He did not open it. He did not glance at the lock. He simply stepped back and waited. Mara unlocked it herself. Inside lay the savings from 62 days of work. Not all of it was hers, not yet. Some would go to wages, some to food orders, some to rental agreements with the ranch and main house, some to repairs. But her share, written and counted each week, had become enough that the Pueblo letter no longer felt like a dream from another woman's life. She could leave. That truth sat in the room beside them. Jonas looked at the closed ledger instead of the money. The stable roof needs patching before snow. Lodge expense or ranch expense? Both. Mara dipped her pen. Explain. Travelers use the west side. Ranch horses use the east. Leak is in the middle. That is convenient for the leak. It has poor business sense. She glanced up, and he was watching her with quiet humor. She looked down before warmth rose too visibly in her face. Half to lodge, half to ranch, materials at cost, labor listed. Agreed. Do not agree before I finish. I have learned the danger. She almost smiled, then counted again to steady herself. Their work had become a language, not a soft one, not yet, but honest. Repair lists, invoices, room counts, firewood stacks, bath schedules, guest complaints. If romance lived anywhere between them, it did not bloom in moonlit speeches. It stood beside Jonas at dawn while he replaced a broken sash without waking the guests. It sat in the second bowl of stew Mara left near the stove because he always forgot to eat when fence trouble came. It rested in the way he knocked before entering her office, every time. One evening, she found him asleep in a chair outside the spring chamber, boots muddy, coat open, hammer still in his hand. He had come to fix a loose board and sat down for only a moment. Mara stood over him, candle in hand. In sleep, the hard lines left his face. He looked younger, not boyish, never that, but less guarded. She saw the man who had buried parents, carried land like weight, and hidden behind plain wool because money had made a mask of his name. The sympathy angered her, not because he did not deserve it, because it made leaving less clean. She took the hammer from his hand. His fingers stirred but did not wake. She set a folded towel between his head and the chair back, then walked away before kindness could ask too much of her. The next morning, he found the towel folded on the chair. He said nothing, but at breakfast in the lodge kitchen, he placed the last biscuit on her plate without looking at her. Mara looked at the biscuit. "I am not a guest," she said. "No." "Then why am I being served?" "Because you served 21 suppers last night and ate half a potato standing by the pantry." She should have given it back. Instead, she broke it in half and put one piece on his plate. He looked at it as if she had handed him a deed. "Eat," she said. He did. That was how the dangerous things happened now. Small, plain, easy to mistake for nothing until they were already in the heart. On the 67th day, Lydia brought trouble wrapped in household dignity. She entered the lodge office after supper, closed the door behind her, and placed a newspaper on Mara's desk. Her finger tapped an advertisement circled in pencil. New boarding house opening near Silver Bend Depot. Fine meals, hot water, lowest rates in the county. Mara read it once. Then again. Lowest rates, Lydia said. They mean to take your road trade. They may try. You are too calm. I have not yet decided whether to panic. This is serious. I know. Jonas came in at Mara's call and read the advertisement standing beside the desk. He did not curse. He did not accuse the other boarding house of anything underhanded. He only looked at the rates listed in small print. They are undercharging, he said. Lydia crossed her arms, then matched them. No, Mara said. Both turned to her. She tapped the page. Those prices do not cover clean linen, fair wages, proper coffee, fuel, and baths unless they cut something guests cannot see at first. Lydia's brows drew together. Travelers like cheap. Travelers like cheap once, they returned to clean. Jonas leaned one hand on the desk. What do you propose? Mara reached for a fresh page. Not lower rates, clearer value. She wrote as she spoke. Rooms with clean linen, meals hot at 6, warm mineral baths, stable space. Fair treatment for women traveling alone, extra charge for late arrivals unless weather or wheel trouble is honest. No hidden fees, no credit without agreement. Lydia looked doubtful. That is not an advertisement, that is a constitution. It is a promise. Jonas was quiet a moment. A promise costs more to keep. Yes, Mara said, that is why people trust it. Lydia looked at Jonas. You are letting her invite competition. Jonas folded the newspaper. I am letting her run her business. Mara looked at him. He did not seem to know how much the sentence mattered. The new notice went to the Silver Bend Gazette the next morning. Mara paid for it from lodge funds. She wrote the words herself and made Jonas read them aloud before sending, not because she needed approval, but because she wanted to hear whether they sounded true. Warm spring rooms at Rusk Ridge. Clean beds, hot meals, warm mineral baths, stable space, and honest prices for the road-weary. Women and families welcome. Ask for Mrs. Rusk. When Jonas reached the last line, his voice changed. Ask for Mrs. Rusk, he said. Mara took the page from him. That is the name people know. Yes. You dislike it. No. What then? He looked at her with that quiet hope she had learned to fear. I like it more than I should, considering you may carry it away. Mara folded the notice. Names are not fences. No, he said, but some become doors. She had no answer for that. 3 days later, the competition made itself felt. 2 riders stopped at Rusk Ridge only to ask directions to the cheaper boarding house. Ada watched them leave from the porch, face long with worry. Maybe our prices are too high, she said. Mara handed her a basket of towels. Our prices are exact. People may not care. Then we will serve the people who do. But that night only 2 guests came. The dining room felt too large. The sun parlor sat empty. Mrs. Prout went home early and Mara still paid her for the promised hours. The cash box sounded lighter than it had in weeks. Mara worked late in the office, running figures. If business fell for 15 days, she could still leave with enough money for Pueblo. If it fell for 30, she would have to decide whether to preserve her share or keep wages steady. If winter came early, roads might favor whichever house sat closest to the depot. For the first time since opening, warm spring rooms seemed fragile. Jonas knocked. Come, she said. He entered with a small wooden crate. From the ranch smokehouse, bacon ends, I brought the cost. He set a paper beside the crate. Mara checked it, fair price, no charity. Thank you. He lingered. You are worried. I am calculating. That is how you worry. She wanted to deny it but could not. If rooms stay empty, I cannot keep everyone paid. You have reserves. Not enough for pride and wages both. Jonas studied her. What would you have done at the Desert Star? Cut waste, made a cheaper supper that still tasted generous, offered baths with towel rental included instead of separate, cleaned rooms better than cheaper places could afford, sent word to stage drivers. Then do that. Mara looked at him. You make it sound simple. No, I make it sound like something you already know how to fight. There it was again, recognition, not rescue. She looked away first. For 4 days, she fought with everything she knew. Bean stew with bacon ends became the road supper, cheap to make and good enough that men scraped their bowls. She offered early coffee for drivers at half price if they brought passengers. She put Ada in charge of greeting tired women and children because Ada's round face made rules sound less fierce. She moved the cleanest quilts to rooms visible from the hall, so guests saw warmth before price. Lydia watched all this with stern fascination. You are courting trade like a widow choosing a second husband, she said one morning. Carefully then. Suspiciously. Successfully, I hope. On the 5th day, the Denver seamstress returned. With her came 4 women traveling together, 2 children, and a crate of hats bound for Silver Bend. The seamstress stepped down from the wagon and called, I told them your rules were strict and your floors were clean. Myra opened the lodge door wider. Both remained true. The women took 3 rooms, 6 baths, 2 suppers, and breakfast for the road. One asked whether Mara kept a separate lock on her chamber door. Mara showed her that every room had a working bolt now. Jonas had fixed them himself, but Mara did not say so. The woman nodded and paid without bargaining. By Saturday, the cash box recovered. By Monday, the stage driver said the cheap boarding house had served cold beans and charged extra for clean towels. By Wednesday, 2 men who had passed Rusk Ridge for lower rates came back and paid Mara's prices without complaint. That evening, Mara closed the ledger and let herself breathe. Jonas stood across the office with a repair list in hand. You were right. About travelers returning to clean. Yes. I enjoy hearing that. I suspected you might. Say it again. His eyes warmed. You were right. Mara's smile came before she could stop it. This time, she did not take it back. Outside, cold wind moved through the courtyard. Inside, the spring water murmured, the lamps glowed, and the lodge held steady because she had made it so. Still, when Mara unlocked the cash box and counted her share that night, she set aside the Pueblo letter beside the money. Not because she was sure she would go, because she needed to know she still could. And as Jonas waited outside the office door without asking what she had decided, Mara understood that the hardest part of freedom was not earning it. The hardest part was choosing what to do once no one stood in your way. On the 71st day, Myra woke to frost on the glass roof, and a line of travelers waiting before the lodge door had been unbarred. Ada came running from the kitchen with her hair half-pinned and flour on her sleeve. Mrs. Rusk, there are people outside. Mara tied her apron tighter. People do have that habit. No, ma'am, not 1 or 2, a line. Mara opened the front door and found 10 faces turned toward her through the cold morning steam of their breath. 3 stage passengers, 2 freight men, a woman with a bandbox, a young father holding a child wrapped in a quilt. Behind them stood the Denver seamstress, smiling as if she had brought a parade and expected thanks. Road washed soft beyond Willow Cut, the seamstress said. Driver says no one should try it until noon. The stage driver lifted his hat. I told them warm spring rooms opens early for honest trouble. Myra looked at him. Did you also tell them honest trouble costs breakfast money? Yes, ma'am, I warned them you would. Then come in before you freeze on my threshold. They came gratefully, filling the room with cold air, stiff hands, and the rustle of travel-worn clothes. Mara moved without wasting a step. Coffee first. Biscuits warmed from yesterday. Oatmeal stretched with apples. Bacon ends fried crisp and broken small so the smell reached every corner. Ada took coins at the counter while Mrs. Prout counted bowls. By 8, the room had settled into the sound Mara liked best. Spoons against tin, chairs shifting, tired voices softening after food. Jonas entered from the courtyard with 2 armloads of split wood. He stopped when he saw the crowd. Mara pointed toward the stove. Wood there, then checked the stable. 2 extra teams came in. He did not answer with ownership. He answered with movement. The young father watched him go. "Is that Mr. Rusk?" "It is," Mara said. The man glanced around the lodge, then toward Mara. "And this place is yours." The question struck the room in a way no one else noticed. Mara wiped her hands on her apron. "It is under my management." "That is not what I asked," the man said kindly. No challenge sat in his voice, only curiosity. Mara looked toward the office door where the account book lay locked away. She thought of the 90-day paper folded inside it, of the share counted every Saturday, of the final choice waiting like a wagon at the edge of dawn. "It is becoming mine," she said. The young father nodded as if that answer made sense. All morning the words stayed with her. Becoming mine. Not given, not inherited, not slipped around her like a chain made of velvet. Becoming. At noon, the road dried enough for the stage to leave. The driver bought 2 loaves for the journey and paid early coffee rates without argument. The seamstress stayed behind to mend a torn cloak for one of the freight men, then asked Mara if warm spring rooms might need a regular mending woman 2 days a month. "I pay cash," Mara said. "I know, that is why I am asking." Mara studied her. The woman's name was Elise Baird. She had clever fingers, straight seams, and a laugh that made Ada braver. 2 trial days, Mara said. "Mending only, no gossiping with guests while stitches are open." Elise raised one hand. "I gossip after knots are tied." "Then we may survive each other." By supper, Mara had added another name to the wage page. That night she sat alone in the office and reviewed the week's figures. More rooms filled, more baths sold, more meals served, more wages paid, profit steady. The sun parlor rent covered, stable rental shared, her own savings now large enough for Pueblo with a reserve beyond the deposit. She opened the cash box and looked at the money. Then she shut it quickly. Freedom should not feel heavy. A soft knock came at the door. "Come," she said. Lydia entered carrying a folded cloth parcel. Mara sat straighter. "Is something wrong?" "Must something be wrong for me to enter?" "In my experience, yes." Lydia set the parcel on the desk. "That is fair." She untied the cloth. Inside lay a ledger older than Mara's, bound in brown leather cracked at the corners. "My sister's lodge book," Lydia said. Mara did not touch it. The old woman's hands rested on either side of the ledger, protective even while offering it. "Abigail kept accounts before illness made her writing poor. I thought you should see what she charged, what she bought, which rooms earned best in winter." Mara's throat tightened. "Why now?" "Because you are no longer merely cleaning her rooms." "What am I doing?" Lydia's eyes moved to the shelves, the counted towels, the office hooks, the little sign Mara had written about fair treatment. "You are continuing what she began without pretending to be her." The words entered Mara more deeply than praise. She placed her hand on the ledger. "Thank you." Lydia nodded, then turned to go. "Mrs. Harrow." Lydia stopped. "If I leave, I will return this before I do." The older woman's face did not change, but something behind it drew tight. "I know." After she left, Mara opened Abigail Rusk's ledger. The writing was graceful, slanted, and sure. Flower prices, bath fees, room repairs. A note beside one entry read, "Charge less for widow with 2 children make up difference from Saturday pie sales." Another said, "East shutter sticks again. Tell Jonas not to climb it like a wildcat." Mara stared at the name. Jonas had been a boy once in these rooms. Not owner, not liar, not husband. A boy his mother scolded in ledger margins. Mara sat with that thought for a long time. The next morning, she found Jonas in room 4 replacing the old window weight. He had a pencil tucked behind one ear and a nail between his teeth. Pale sunlight cut across his rolled sleeves. "Your mother kept a ledger," Mara said. He went still. Then he removed the nail from his mouth. "Lydia gave it to you." "Yes." He looked at the window frame, not at her. "I have not opened that book in years." "Why?" "Because she sounds alive in it." Mara understood that better than she wanted to. "She wrote that you climbed shutters like a wildcat." A faint smile touched his mouth, sad and young. "I did." "Did you break them?" "Usually." "She charged your father for repairs." "She tried." Mara stepped into the room, leaving the door open. This place was hers. "Yes." "You let it sit closed because grief shouted louder than work." His eyes met hers then. "Yes." The answer was quiet and honest. Mara looked at the window he was repairing. "I have been angry because this house made me feel small, but some rooms here were wounded before I arrived." Jonas held the sash rope between his fingers. "That does not excuse what I did." "No, it explains some of what I walked into." He accepted the difference without reaching for comfort. Mara turned to leave, then stopped. "Jonas." "Yes." "Your mother's book stays in my office until the 90 days end." His eyes searched hers. "All right. And if I go, I will leave you a copy of Useful Winter Rates." For the first time that morning, pain crossed his face openly. He covered it fast, but not before she saw. "Thank you," he said. She walked out before either of them could say more. The days that followed brought a strange peace, not because the question of leaving had vanished, but because everyone had stopped pretending it did not stand in the room. Ada asked once whether Pueblo was very far. "Far enough," Mara said. "Will you need a girl who knows sums?" Mara looked up from the pantry list. Ada's face went red. "I only meant if you went, not that I want you to, only if." Mara set down the pencil. "If I go, I will not take you from your mother without asking her and paying fairly." Ada swallowed. "Mrs. Prude is my aunt." "Then I will ask your aunt and pay fairly." Ada nodded, then burst into tears over a sack of beans. Mara held her with one arm, awkward and firm, until the girl stopped shaking. She did not promise to stay. She did not promise to take Ada. She had learned promises must not be used to calm a moment if they could not hold up in daylight. That evening, Jonas found Mara in the guest kitchen kneading dough harder than necessary. "Ada cried," he said. "She has eyes, she can see the calendar." "So can I." Mara pressed the dough flat. "What do you see?" 76 days. She folded the dough, and after 90. He was quiet long enough that she looked at him. "I see 2 roads," he said. "One with you leaving in the wagon, one with you staying. I am trying not to stand in front of either." Her hands slowed. "That sounds painful." "It is." The honesty of it settled between them like low firelight. Mara looked down at the dough. "Sometimes I wish you would make it easier to hate you." His voice was rougher when he answered, "I have wished that too." She looked at him then. For one breath, the kitchen felt too small for all that remained unsaid. Then Mrs. Prude called from the dining room, "If either of you is standing idle, there are 7 plates waiting." Mara stepped back from the dough. Jonas picked up the tray. The moment passed, but it did not disappear. On the 78th day, a new sign was painted for the road. Not the final sign above the lodge door, only a roadside board with fresh black letters and a small mark of steam rising from a basin. Mara had designed it. Jonas had cut the board. Elise had painted the border because her hand was steadier than both of theirs. They carried it to the roadside together in the orange light before sunset. Jonas held the post while Myra checked the angle. "Higher on your side," she said. He lifted it. "Too high." He lowered it. "Now crooked." "Myra, do not take that tone with a woman holding the hammer." He looked down at her. "I was going to say yes, ma'am." She drove the nail in herself. When the sign stood firm, they stepped back. Warm spring rooms. Clean meals, mineral baths, honest prices. Ask for Mrs. Rusk. The last line pulled at her. Jonas saw it. "We can change that." "No," she said, "not yet." "Not yet." She did not answer. A wagon appeared far down the road, rolling toward the ridge through the amber dust. Another guest, maybe, another meal, another coin, another thread tying her to a place she could still choose to leave. Jonas stood beside her, hands in his coat pockets. Myra looked at the sign until the letters blurred in the sunset. "Before the next part, tell me whether you think she should stay or leave after 90 days. Because with 12 days left, Myra had earned enough money to walk away. And that made every reason to stay feel more dangerous than any poverty she had ever survived. On the 80th day, snow showed itself on the far peaks. Not on Rusk Ridge yet, not close enough to quiet the road. But white touched the high blue line beyond the north pasture, and every old ranch hand who saw it began talking about winter as if it were a creditor coming to collect. Myra stood outside warm spring rooms with her arms folded, watching Jonas and two men stack cut wood beneath the lodge eaves. The woodpile had grown high enough to cast a shadow over the back step. "That is too much," she called. Jonas set another split log in place. "No. It blocks the light from the pantry window. Light does not keep guests warm. Neither does a pantry so dark Ada mistakes salt for sugar." Ada, who was sweeping the porch, gasped. "That happened once." "It happened to Biscuits," Mara said. "Biscuits remember." One of the ranch hands laughed and quickly turned it into a cough when Jonas looked at him. Jonas wiped his gloves on his coat. "I will move the last row." "2 rows." "1, 2, and I will not charge the ranch for the coffee your men have been drinking all morning." The hand beside Jonas went very still. Jonas looked at the woodpile, then at Myra. 2 rows. Myra nodded once, wise. The ranch hand waited until Jonas bent for another log before muttering, "Mrs. Rusk bargains like weather." Jonas said, "Weather is less exact." Myra heard him and pretended not to. The day should have felt ordinary. Wood, rooms, meals, baths, accounts. Ordinary had become precious in a way Myra had not expected. She knew which shutter banged when the wind came east. She knew which tile in the spring room stayed slippery no matter how much sand they used. She knew that Lydia took tea at 3, but inspected the sun parlor at 2:30. So guests had to be cleared from the best chair before then, unless Myra wanted a lecture about crumbs near family history. She knew Jonas came to the lodge kitchen when he was worried, not to speak, but to find something to repair. That morning, he had repaired a drawer that had not needed repairing. Myra had noticed. At noon, the mail rider brought the second letter from Pueblo. Myra saw it in Lydia's hand before anyone spoke. The envelope looked the same as the first, but this one felt heavier. Lydia entered the lodge office, placed it on the desk, and remained standing. Myra dried her fingers on her apron. "You have already guessed what it is." "I do not guess," Lydia said. "I observe unpleasant facts before they announce themselves." Myra picked up the envelope. The leaseholder in Pueblo had accepted her references. The boarding house could be hers if she came within 12 days with deposit in hand. A stove had been repaired. 3 bedsteads remained. Kitchen service was plain but usable. The landlord would not hold it longer without payment. 12 days. Myra sat down slowly. Lydia looked toward the window. where Jonas was moving the woodpile 2 rows back from the pantry light. Does he know? Not yet. Will you tell him? Yes. Went. Mara folded the letter along its crease. When I can say it without sounding like I am asking him to stop me. Lydia's gaze softened in the smallest possible way. That may never be easy. No. Then do not wait for easy. After Lydia left, Mara placed the Pueblo letter in the cash box beneath her counted share. She shut the lid and locked it. The key shook once in her hand. She hated that. By supper, the lodge was full of freight men carrying talk of early snow. Mara moved through the room with practiced calm, but the letter stayed inside her like a coal. Jonas watched her from the serving counter, and she knew he was trying not to ask. After the last bath had been scrubbed and the last guest had gone to bed, Mara found him in the stable aisle checking the west roof patch by lantern. She stood by the stall door. The Pueblo house is available. Jonas lowered the lantern. How long will they hold it? 12 days. He nodded. No flinch, no plea, only that steady acceptance that hurt worse than a demand. Mara gripped the stall rail. I have enough for the deposit, supplies, fare, and a reserve, even after wages here. I figured you did. You figured. I know what the lodge has been earning. Her eyes sharpened. He added quickly, not your share. I know the room counts, meal counts, supply wagons, and what stage traffic brings. I did not open your box. The anger eased, but not the ache. I could leave before the 90 days, she said. The terms allow it. Yes. You would let me. Jonas hung the lantern on a nail. Mara, letting is not mine anymore. The stable grew quiet around them. A horse shifted, blowing warm breath into the cold aisle. She looked at the man she had married out of fear and necessity. In lamplight, he looked tired, older than his years, and terribly careful. Once, careful had meant secretive. Now it meant he held his own want like something dangerous and kept it pointed away from her. I do not know what I want, she said. His voice was low. I know what I want. The honesty stilled her. He did not step closer. I want you here, he said. At the lodge, at breakfast, in the office with ink on your finger because you forget the pen leaks, arguing with Lydia over carrots, scolding me for uneven nails. I want to hear travelers ask for Mrs. Rusk and know they mean you before they mean my name. Mara's throat tightened. Jonas looked down at his hands. But wanting you does not pay your debt to me because there is no debt. It does not erase what I hid. It does not make staying right. It is only the truth. You asked for that. She turned her face away. For weeks she had demanded truth from him like payment. Now that he gave it plain and unguarded, it frightened her more than the lie had. Lies could be fought. Truth had to be carried. Thank you, she said. It was not enough. It was all she could manage. The next morning, Mara told Ada, Mrs. Prout, Nell, and Elise that the 90-day agreement would end soon, and that she had an offer to take a boarding house in Pueblo. She did it in the lodge kitchen, with flour sacks stacked by the wall and the copper kettle steaming behind her. Ada cried immediately. Nell looked angry. Who will run this place? I do not know yet, Mara said. Mrs. Prout wiped both hands on her apron. Does Mr. Rusk want you gone? No. Then why go? Mara took a breath. Because wanting me to stay is not the same as me choosing to. Elise nodded slowly. That is a hard difference. It is the only difference that matters. No one liked the answer. Mara had not expected them to. Still, work continued. That was the mercy of kitchens and ledgers. Bread needed kneading whether hearts were confused or not. Towels needed washing whether a woman stayed or went. Guests needed supper, and travelers did not care that the woman counting their coins had a life standing at a crossroads. The lodge grew busier as word of snow moved down from the mountains. The new boarding house near Silver Bend lowered prices again, but by then its reputation had soured. Warm spring rooms received families, teamsters, a pair of sisters heading west, 3 cattle men, and a printer who offered to trade handbills for 2 nights' lodging. Myra almost refused. Then she asked to see his work. By evening, he had set type for a small, clean handbill. Warm spring rooms at Rusk Ridge. Clean beds. Hot meals. Warm mineral baths. Honest prices. Managed by Mrs. Mara Rusk. Myra stared at the final line. Managed by. Not owned by, not wife of, not charity of. Managed by. She paid him half in coin and half in lodging, written clearly in the book. Jonas found one handbill drying near the office stove. He read it without touching. Managed by Mrs. Mara Rusk, he said. That is accurate. Yes. You sound strange. He swallowed. I have seen my name on contracts, deeds, cattle bills, bank papers, and court notices. I never liked it much. And on a handbill. His eyes lifted to hers. Beside yours, it looks better. Myra had no ledger column for what those words cost her. On the 84th day, Lydia asked Myra to take supper in the main dining room. Myra almost refused. I have guests, she said. You have staff. I am staff. You are family too, however inconveniently everyone arrived there. Myra looked at her. Lydia stood with her keys at her waist and her chin high, but her fingers betrayed her, pressing together once before stilling. Jonas will be there, Lydia added. So will I. No guests, no silver beyond ordinary, no speeches. No speeches. I would rather sleep in the stable. Myra accepted. That evening, for the first time since her wedding day, Myra sat at the main dining table, not in the grand blue suite, not as a bride being swallowed by wealth, at supper, in a plain dark dress with her work hands scrubbed clean but still rough near the knuckles. The room was wide and quiet. The portraits watched from the walls. Lydia sat at one end, Jonas at the side, leaving the head of the table empty. Myra noticed. Why is no one sitting there? Jonas looked at the chair. My father sat there. Lydia said, then no one sat there well after him. Myra unfolded her napkin. Chairs are not graves. Lydia stiffened. Jonas looked at Myra sharply, but she continued before either could mistake her. If a house keeps every room exactly as grief left it, then the dead own more than memory. They own breakfast, supper, and every empty place between. The room went silent. Lydia's face paled, but she did not rebuke her. Jonas looked toward the empty chair for a long time. Then he stood. Myra thought he meant to leave. Instead, he walked to the head of the table, pulled the chair back, and sat down. Lydia closed her eyes briefly. When she opened them, they shone, though her voice remained steady. The soup is getting cold. Myra picked up her spoon. No one spoke for several minutes. Yet something in the room changed, not healed, not mended in one supper, but loosened like an old window finally opened. Afterward, Lydia found Myra in the hall. You speak too plainly, she said. Yes. It is a troubling habit. Yes. Lydia looked toward the dining room, where Jonas stood alone beside his father's chair. Do not lose it, she said. Then she walked away. On the 87th morning, Myra packed the first layer of her trunk. Not all of it, not yet. One dress, 2 aprons, her spare shoes, the Pueblo letter, the handbill, the Denver seamstress's first pinned note. She placed them carefully, as if arranging proof for a judge she could not see. Then she sat on the edge of the bed in the small east room she had chosen over the blue suite. From the window, she could see the lodge courtyard. Ada crossed it carrying towels. Jonas walked behind her with a ladder. Lydia stood near the sun parlor door correcting something no one else could see. Myra pressed both hands flat against her skirt. Poverty had taught her to leave before she was pushed. Pride had taught her to stand before she was pitied. But no one had taught her what to do when staying required more courage than leaving. That night after the lodge closed, Mara went to the office and wrote 2 lists. Reasons to leave. Reasons to stay. Under the first she wrote, Independence, Pueblo House, no shadow of the lie, my own beginning. Under the second she wrote, Warm spring rooms, Ada, Lydia's trust, fair partnership, Jonas trying, the spring water at dawn. She stopped before writing the last reason. Then slowly she added it. Jonas. The word looked dangerous on paper. So she closed the book. If Mara's 90-day challenge touched your heart, don't forget to like this story. Because with only 3 mornings left, her trunk had begun to fill. And Jonas Rusk, who wanted her more honestly than he had married her, was still refusing to stand between his wife and the road. On the 88th day, Mara woke to the sound of Jonas splitting wood. Not the fast, angry kind of chopping men did when they wished to break more than logs. His rhythm was steady. Lift, swing, crack, set, lift again, work without drama. Work because morning had come and warmth would be needed whether a wife stayed or left. Mara stood at the small east window in her nightdress, one hand resting against the cold glass. Below, the courtyard was still blue with dawn. Jonas worked beside the lodge woodshed, his breath smoking in the air. Beyond him, warm spring rooms glowed faintly from the banked kitchen fire. The sign by the road stood dark against the pale ridge. The wagon trail curved away toward Silver Bend and farther on toward Pueblo. Her trunk sat half-packed beside the bed. It looked patient. That angered her. She turned away and dressed for work. The lodge gave her no mercy that day. 2 families arrived before breakfast, one with a baby who cried whenever his mother stopped walking. A ranch hand tracked mud into the sun parlor and earned himself a bucket and brush under Lydia's supervision. The coffee grinder jammed. Ada overfilled the oatmeal pot. Nell discovered mice had gotten into a sack of cornmeal, and Elise had to mend a guest's torn sleeve, while the man stood wearing a blanket and looking deeply wronged by decency. Mara handled each trouble because troubles were easier than choices. At noon, a freight wagon brought the largest supply order Warm Spring Rooms had ever purchased with its own funds. Flour, coffee, dried apples, lamp oil, soap bricks, 6 new towels, 2 chamber locks, and a narrow iron safe small enough for the office but heavy enough that 3 men complained while carrying it. Mara stood with the invoice in hand as they set it against the wall. Ada stared. Is that for the lodge money? Yes. Because the cash box got too heavy. Because the cash box got too tempting. For who? Mara looked at the door, where 2 traveling salesmen were pretending not to examine the office shelves. For human nature. Jonas entered behind the freight men and paid them for the lifting from the lodge account, not his pocket. He placed the receipt on Mara's desk without comment. She checked it. Exact. That word had become part of him now. Exact charges, exact repairs, exact truth when he could manage it, exact silence when words might crowd her. Thank you, she said. He nodded. The freight men left. Ada returned to the kitchen. For a moment, Mara and Jonas stood alone with the new safe between them. I can bolt it to the floor, he said. After supper. Before supper would be better. Before supper, room 2 needs fresh sheets, the west bath needs scrubbing, and your ranch hands are eating here at 4. After supper, then. She looked at him. You did not argue. I am saving my strength for the floor bolts. Mara's smile nearly came, nearly. Then her eyes moved to the packed trunk visible through the upper window of the east room. Jonas followed her gaze but said nothing. That was the shape of the whole day. Work crowded against tenderness, and neither of them dared lean too hard. In the afternoon, Lydia summoned Mara to the main house. That alone was not unusual anymore. Lydia summoned people the way church bells summoned sinners, but this time she waited in the west hall outside a narrow door Mara had never seen opened. I need your opinion, Lydia said. Mara looked at the door, That sounds expensive. It is. Lydia unlocked it. Inside was a storeroom packed with furniture beneath linen covers. Narrow bedsteads, cane chairs, 2 washstands, rolled rugs, curtain rods, lamps without chimneys, and a stack of framed mirrors leaning against the wall. Mara stepped in slowly. "These belong to the old guest cottages," Lydia said. "Some are sound, some are not. I kept them because throwing away usable things is a sin committed mostly by rich fools." Mara ran a hand over the nearest bedstead, solid walnut, scratched but strong. "With these," Mara said, "the back rooms of the lodge could be opened." "Yes. 4 more beds, maybe 5 if the small chamber is arranged properly." "Yes." Mara looked at Lydia. "Why show me now?" Lydia's face was composed, but her hand had closed over the key ring at her waist. "Because whether you stay or go, the business should not be left half-grown." The words were practical. The hurt beneath them was not. Mara walked to the window. Dust softened the afternoon light. "If I leave, Jonas can hire a manager." "Yes." "You could run it." "I could command it. That is not the same thing." Mara turned back. Lydia stood among covered furniture like a guard, finally opening a gate she had held shut too long. "I was angry when Jonas brought you here," Lydia said. "Not at you first, at him, then at you because you were easier to stand in front of." Mara stayed quiet. "He had no right to hide this house from you, but I feared you would see only stone, cattle, and money. I feared you would take what softer women had wanted and leave him with empty rooms again." "I might still leave him with empty rooms." "No," Lydia said, "you may leave, that is different." Mara felt the words in her chest. Lydia removed a small key from the ring and held it out. "Storeroom key, not for the household, for lodge inventory if you choose to expand." Mara did not take it at once. "If I leave tomorrow after tomorrow," she said, "why give this now?" "Because respect should not wait until it is safe." Mara closed her fingers around the key. It was small, plain, not a grand symbol, yet she knew what it cost Lydia to loosen it from the ring. "Thank you," Mara said. Lydia's chin lifted. "Do not thank me until you have seen how many chair legs need mending." That evening, the lodge fed 23 people. It should have been too many. It nearly was, but the work moved with a rhythm that had not existed 2 months before. Ada handled breakfast accounts for guests paying ahead. Mrs. Prout ran the stove with calm authority. Nell and her sister moved linens without being told. Elise mended beside the spring room and charged fare by the piece. Lydia directed the sun parlor without once asking Mara if she had permission. Jonas repaired the kitchen pump after it groaned itself useless during the supper rush. He worked on his knees with his sleeves rolled, water splashing his hands, while Mara stood over him holding the lantern. "Can it be fixed tonight?" she asked. "Yes." "Truth." He looked up. "Yes, but I will curse quietly in my head." "Acceptable." The pump gave one last stubborn cough, then water surged clear into the basin. Ada cheered from the kitchen. Mrs. Prout said praise be and immediately filled 2 pots. Jonas sat back on his heels, soaked to the cuffs. Mara handed him a towel. Their fingers brushed. It was nothing, a small touch gone before anyone could name it. Yet it moved through Mara with the force of a door opening in a quiet house. Jonas felt it too. She saw it in the way he went still, not taking more, not turning the brush of fingers into a claim, only receiving the moment and letting it remain free. Mara looked away. After the guests settled, she went to the office to count the day's receipts. Jonas bolted the new safe to the floor while she worked. They shared the little room in silence, each busy with tools of a kind, her pen and ledger, his wrench and screws. When he finished, he stood, "Try it." Mara tested the safe, solid. She placed the cash box inside, along with the Pueblo letter, the lease terms, the handbill, and Abigail's ledger wrapped in cloth. Then she locked the safe and put the key on the chain at her waist beside the brass lodge key and Lydia's storeroom key. Jonas watched the keys settle against her skirt. "You look like Lydia," he said. Myra raised an eyebrow. "In authority," he added quickly, "not in temper." From the doorway came Lydia's voice. "My temper is the reason this house still has spoons." Jonas closed his eyes briefly. Myra could not help it. She laughed. Not small this time, not hidden, a real laugh that filled the office and reached the hall. Lydia looked pleased for half a second and then restored herself. "There are guests still awake. Do not become disorderly." She left. Jonas looked at Myra, as if the sound of her laughter had put light somewhere no lamp could reach. Myra's laughter faded, but not the warmth. For a moment, she let herself imagine staying. Not as surrender, not as defeat, not because poverty had cornered her or because wealth had softened the walls. Staying as a woman with keys at her waist, money in a safe, a business under her hand, and a husband who had learned to knock. The image was so sweet that she distrusted it. She turned back to the ledger. "Tomorrow is day 89, she said. "I know. I will pack fully tomorrow night." Jonas's face tightened once, then steadied. "Do you want the wagon ready on the 90th morning or the 91st? The question hurt because it was right. 90th, she said, sunrise. He nodded. "I will have it ready." Myra gripped the pen. "Jonas." He stopped at the door. "If I choose to go, I do not want anyone watching from the porch. I will tell them. If Ada cries, I may lose my courage. She will cry in the kitchen." Myra smiled sadly. "That sounds like her." Jonas looked at her for a long moment. "If you choose to go, I will drive you as far as Silver Bend myself, unless you would rather another man take you." The thought of sitting beside him on the road away felt unbearable. "I do not know." "Then I will have another driver ready and myself ready too. You choose in the morning." Choice again. Always choice now. It should have made everything easier. Instead, Myra felt her heart turning over like soil before winter. On the 89th day, she worked with a calm that fooled no one. Ada cried twice and blamed onions both times, even when no onions were present. Mrs. Prout baked too much bread. Nell polished room numbers until they shone brighter than necessary. Elise stitched Myra a little cloth pouch for safe keys and pretended it was only scrap fabric put to use. Lydia inspected everything and corrected almost nothing. Jonas stayed outside most of the day, mending harness, checking wheels, oiling the wagon axles. Myra saw him once from the sun parlor window. He stood with one hand on her trunk after carrying it down from storage, his head bowed. Not praying, perhaps. Or perhaps men like Jonas prayed, by touching what they were about to lose and saying nothing. At dusk, Myra packed. This time she did not stop at one layer. She folded both dresses, all aprons but the one she would wear in the morning, her comb, her small Bible, the Denver seamstress's note, the warm spring handbill, her share record copied from the ledger, the Pueblo letter, the pouch Elise had made. She left Abigail's ledger in the safe. Then she looked around the east room. It had never been the grand suite chosen for a rich man's bride. It was small, plain, and faced the lodge courtyard. It smelled faintly of soap, cedar smoke, and ink. On the peg by the door hung the shawl Lydia had once called too thin and replaced with a warmer one, charging it against Myra's personal account because Myra had insisted. Myra touched the shawl but did not pack it. Not yet. She carried her travel purse downstairs. In the office, Jonas waited with the final week's preliminary accounts stacked in order. He had not opened the cash box. He had not written her share. He had only laid out the invoices, wage slips, ranch charges, and room totals so she could finish them. "You did not calculate it," she said. "It is yours to calculate." She sat. For 2 hours, Myra worked through the numbers. Jonas remained by the doorway until she told him to either sit down or haunt someone else. He sat on the spare chair by the wall. At last, the final amount appeared. Her earned share through day 89, with day 90 breakfast still to be added before sunrise. It was enough. Enough for Pueblo, enough for rent, supplies, and fear, enough to leave without asking any man for rescue. Mara copied the amount onto a clean page and slid it across the desk. Jonas read it. His face did not change, but his hand closed slowly around the paper. "That is exact?" he asked. "Yes." "No extra owed?" "No. No debt to me." "No." He placed the paper back on the desk. "Good. Good." Such a small word for a breaking heart. Mara stood before she could weep. "I will give you my decision at sunrise." "I will be ready." She walked past him, then stopped. The office lamp burned low. The lodge had gone quiet. From below the floor came the endless hush of warm spring water, running whether she stayed to hear it or not. "Jonas," she said without turning. "Yes." "I wish you had told me the truth before I loved anything here." For a moment there was no sound. Then his voice came, rough and low. "So do I." Mara went upstairs alone. Outside, the wagon stood ready in the frost, its wheels pointed toward the road. Inside, warm spring rooms slept full of guests who would wake wanting coffee, baths, and breakfast. And between them, with her trunk by the door and her money nearly counted, Mara waited for the sunrise that would finally ask what no one else could answer for her. Mara rose before the first rooster called. The east room was dark, save for the gray line of dawn beneath the curtain. Her trunk stood by the door, strapped and ready. Her travel dress hung over the chair. Her purse lay on the washstand, heavier than any purse she had ever owned, filled with money earned by beds made, meals served, baths scrubbed, prices argued, and wages counted fair. For a long moment, she only looked at it. There had been years when a nickel decided whether she ate supper. Years when a landlord's frown could change where she slept. Years when a closed hotel door could turn a grown woman into someone waiting for rescue. Not this morning. This morning, if Myra Whitlock Rusk walked out, she would walk with enough money to begin again in Pueblo. Not a rich beginning, not an easy one, but hers. She dressed slowly. Downstairs, the house was quiet but not asleep. A lamp burned near the hall table. Lydia stood beside it, wrapped in a dark shawl, her keys at her waist. "You are early," Lydia said. "So are you." "I dislike surprises." Myra looked toward the front doors. Then today must be trying. Lydia's mouth moved, but no smile came. Her eyes looked tired. "The wagon is ready," she said. Jonas checked the harness twice, then a third time because he did not know what to do with his hands. Myra swallowed. Lydia held out a small, folded paper. "Your day 90 breakfast estimate." Ada insisted the coffee should be included because travelers already asked for it. I corrected the total. Mara took it. The numbers were neat, exact. "Thank you." Lydia's fingers moved to her key ring. She removed one key, smaller than the lodge key, brighter than the storeroom key, worn smooth at the bow. Mara stared at it. "What is that?" "The main household side door. It opens the west hall, pantry passage, and family office." "I have not decided." "I know." Lydia placed the key in Mara's palm anyway. "This is not a plea. It is not a bribe. If you leave, set it on the hall table before you go. If you stay, stop waiting for me to open doors you have already earned the right to enter." Mara closed her fingers around the key. The older woman lifted her chin. "You are troublesome, proud, strict with towels, and too plain in speech." Mara's eyes burned. "That sounds like farewell." "It is either farewell or welcome. I will know which after breakfast." Then Lydia turned and walked toward the kitchen before Mara could answer. Outside, frost silvered the courtyard stones. The wagon waited with her trunk tied behind the seat. Jonas stood near the horses in his work coat, bareheaded despite the cold. Another driver waited by the barn, just as promised, ready to take her if sitting beside Jonas proved too hard. Jonas looked at her when she stepped outside. He did not move toward her. On the office desk inside warm spring rooms, the final account lay open. Mara entered Lydia's breakfast estimate, subtracted supplies and wages, added the last room payments, then counted her share one final time. Jonas stood across the desk. She counted aloud. Every coin, every bill, every cent. When she finished, she looked up. That is the final amount. He nodded. Exact. Exact. No extra. No extra. No debt. No debt. He took a folded packet from his coat and placed it beside the ledger. Then this is the matching copy for you, same amount, same figures, signed by me. Mara opened it. His handwriting was plain and careful. Not one added dollar. Not one hidden gift. She placed the money into her purse. You could have made it harder. Yes. Why didn't you? Jonas looked toward the wagon. Because I want you, but my wanting you cannot become another room you cannot leave. Her breath caught. He continued, voice rough but steady. I want you at Rusk Ridge. I want your account book on this desk. I want your rules frightening careless men into better manners. I want your laughter in the kitchen and your keys beside Lydia's. I want to build whatever warm spring rooms becomes with you. But if you choose Pueblo, I will not call it betrayal. Mara looked down at the brass key at her waist, the storeroom key, the safe key, and now the household key in her hand. When I first came here, she said, this place felt like proof that you owned the truth and I only lived inside it. I know, but the lodge is not that anymore. No, it has my work in it. Yes, my prices. Yes, my mistakes. Jonas's eyes softened, a few of mine too. Despite herself, Mara smiled through the ache, more than a few. Yes, ma'am. The first pale sunlight touched the glass roof. Steam glowed behind the panes. In the kitchen, Ada's voice rose, scolding someone about muddy boots. A guest laughed. Mrs. Prout called for more coffee. Lydia's sharper voice answered that coffee did not pour faster for men who complained. Life was already moving, without waiting for Mara's heart to settle. She walked outside. Jonas followed at a distance. Mara stood beside the wagon and placed one hand on her trunk. It was tied well. Ready. Honest. She could climb up, ride to Silver Bend, take the stage, and be in Pueblo with her future folded in a purse and no one stopping her. That was why she could finally turn away from it. Untie my trunk, she said. Jonas went still. Mara. I said untie it. Are you sure? No, she looked at him fully. But I am free, and that means I do not need certainty to obey fear. His face changed then, not into triumph, but into wonder. Mara stepped closer. I am not staying for the mansion. I know. I am not staying because poverty chased me here. I know. I am not staying because you want me. His voice dropped. I know. She lifted the household key Lydia had given her. I am staying because I can leave, and this morning I choose not to. Jonas closed his eyes for one breath. When he opened them, he did not reach for her as if claiming a prize. He only held out his hand. Mara took it. His hand was cold, rough from harness leather, and careful around hers. They stood that way while the sun rose over Rusk Ridge. Then Ada burst through the lodge door, saw the trunk still on the wagon, and began crying so hard Mrs. Prout had to take the coffee pot from her. Lydia appeared behind them, looked at Mara's hand in Jonas's, and gave one sharp nod. Good, Lydia said. Now both of you stop making the courtyard sentimental. We have 17 breakfasts and one man asking whether mineral baths cure foolishness. Charge him double, Mara said. Lydia's eyes warmed. I intended to. By noon, the trunk was back in the east room, not the blue suite. Mara chose her own room still. The wagon was unloaded. The Pueblo letter was folded into the safe, not destroyed, not hidden, but kept as proof that choice had once stood ready at sunrise. That afternoon, Jonas carried a new sign into the courtyard. The board was painted cream with dark letters, cleaner than the roadside notice and wide enough to hang above the lodge entrance. Mara read it. Warm spring house. Rooms, meals, mineral baths. Managed by Mara Rusk and Jonas Rusk. "The letters are straight," she said. "I hired Elise. Wise." Together they lifted the sign onto the iron brackets above the door. Jonas held one side. Mara held the other. Lydia stood below pretending not to worry. Ada and Nell watched from the steps. Mrs. Prout wiped her hands on her apron and smiled. When the sign settled into place, Mara stepped down and looked at it. Not his estate. Not her escape. Their work. A stage wagon turned through the stone gates, dust rising gold behind it. Guests were coming. Supper would need stretching. Towels would need counting. The new safe would need locking. The spring would keep running beneath the floor, warm and steady. Jonas picked up the ladders. "Looks like we have work, Mrs. Rusk." Myra opened the lodge door and let the warm mineral air meet the morning. "Then quit standing around, Mr. Rusk." Subscribe for more romantic Wild West stories where pride, love, and second chances meet on the frontier. She married him because poverty left her no choice, but she stayed only after she earned the freedom to leave.